Yang Kai didn't show any fear though and instead just grinned and said, "If you kill me, you may not be able to withstand the consequences. A trivial prisoner dares try to bargain with father? No one will care if trash like you dies." "Really?" Yang Kai spat out a mouthful of blood. Senior Brother Ko said he is going to ask Protector Bien for instructions about how to deal with us. "You tell me, what will your fate be if Protector Bien learns that you killed me without her permission?" Hearing the name Protector Bien, Yen Xiaoran's eyes flashed with a strong sense of fear, and like a basin of cold water was splashed onto him. His anger instantly cooled. "Seems like I am right." Seeing his expression, Yang Kai completely calmed down. Judging from these Blue Feather sect disciples' behavior, this sect did not seem to be anything good. Likewise, these cultivators were not good people. Most likely, the only reason this sect continued to exist was that rules were strictly enforced and breaking them led to severe punishment. This was why Yang Kai used Protector Bien's name as a deterrent despite never having met her before. Yen Xiaoran really did begin to hesitate. Just as Yang Kai said, if Yen Xiaoran really killed him before Protector Bien gave the order, it would be a disaster for him. Even if Protector Bien didn't kill him, he would still lose a layer of skin. As such, he didn't dare think about killing anymore. However, his treasure-seizing snake was killed by Yang Kai, so it was impossible for him to simply drop this matter. After hesitating for a while, Yen Xiaoran walked towards Yang Kai and savagely spat, "Brat! Know this. Once Protector Bien orders your death, Father here will personally send you down." Yang Kai curled his lips sharply when he heard these words. "But now, while you can escape capital punishment, some suffering is due. Your physique seems a bit unusual, so Father here hopes you do not give in too quickly." Saying so, Yen Xiaoran rushed in front of Yang Kai and pushed his source chi violently onto his fist and punched Yang Kai's abdomen fiercely. Honk! Yang Kai felt as if he had been struck by lightning, and his whole body bent into a shrimp shape as he convulsed in pain. Unable to hold back, Yang Kai coughed up a big mouthful of blood onto Yen Xiaoran. The latter was caught off guard again, and before he knew it, his face was covered in blood. Being provoked again and again, Yen Xiaoran's patience was at its limits, and he could not stop himself from lifting his leg and sweeping it towards Yang Kai's neck. The next moment, Yang Kai flew out and fell to the ground, motionless. From the looks of it, he had passed out. "Consider yourself lucky." Yen Xiaoran snorted coldly before turning around and shouting at Lu Xianyun viciously, "Drag him with you and follow me." Now that his treasure-seizing snake had died, it would be impossible to snatch Lu Xianyun's artifacts, even if Yen Xiaoran wanted to. He could only imprison the two of them in the bone prison first before finding other ways to torture them. Lu Xianyun heard this and hurriedly ran over to Yang Kai's side before stretching out her finger to check his pulse. After confirming that he was still alive, she could not help breathing a sigh of relief. After calming down, Lu Xianyun stretched out her hand and lifted Yang Kai up before carrying him on her back. Following Yen Xiaoran, she walked into the cave in the mountainside and immediately felt a kind of pressure that forced her neck to shrink slightly. From the belly of the mountain, pain shouts faintly echoed, adding a gloomy and menacing air to the already gloomy cave. As Yen Xiaoran led the way, he sneered and commented, "After entering the bone prison, there are not many people who come out alive. If you do not want to suffer any inhuman treatment, you'd best hand over your artifacts to me as soon as possible, and I can make life a bit more comfortable for you. Otherwise, you'll learn what living a life worse than death really means." Lu Xianyun's pretty face paled slightly as her tender body trembled, but she still bit her thin lip and held her tongue. The deeper they went, the darker and damper the environment became, and it wasn't long before an unpleasant smell also began to fill the air, causing Lu Xianyun to frown. After descending what seemed to be about 1,000 meters, they arrived at a dungeon. The cells here were separated by some kind of fencing refined from monster beast bones that seemed extremely strong. From the dim cells, many scarlet eyes, like those of wild beasts, stared towards Yen Xiaoran and the others, causing Lu Xianyun's hair to stand on end slightly. "Kill me! Kill me! Please kill me!" A horrible howl came from somewhere as someone begged for death. Lu Xianyun could not imagine what kind of torture this man was enduring that actually made him prefer death to life. But here, death obviously became a kind of extravagant hope as the pleading voice quickly turned into a series of extremely miserable howls. Lu Xianyun's cheeks were already pale and bloodless, as she felt that this might be her future destiny, causing her great sorrow and pain. "Get in!" Yan Xiaoran suddenly stopped in front of a cell, opened the door, and motioned to Lu Xianyun. Lu Xianyun did not dare to defy him, so she could only walk into the cell with Yang Kai still on her back. Yan Xiaoran closed the cell tightly as soon as Lu Xianyun entered before directing a sneer at her and rapping his fingers on the bone fence. "These two are new. Make sure you entertain them well." Having said what he wanted to say, he turned around and left. At the same time, a few scarlet eyes suddenly lit up inside the cell that was originally dark and silent. Lu Xianyun was taken aback as it was not until this time that she realized that there were already 4 people inside this cell. "Huh? A woman?" Suddenly, a shout of pleasant surprise rang out as a cultivator who had been imprisoned here began taking deep sniffs of the air with his nose, apparently indulging in Lu Xianyun's faint body scent. His whole person became extremely excited. "A woman came here? Ha 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 ha! The heavens have blessed us brothers." Someone immediately laughed. When this word spread, there was a commotion in the nearby cells as numerous prisoners crowded beside the fence to stare at Lu Xianyun with interest. Bursts of lewd laughter rang out as everyone was clearly expecting a good show to start soon. Lu Xianyun's complexion sank as she hurriedly backed away to the innermost position and leaned herself against a wall while staring forward vigilantly. Inside the cell, a burly man stood up slowly. This man was at least 2 meters tall, and his huge size alone gave him an imposing presence. Although his strength was also clearly sealed, his whole figure exuded a fierce aura like that of a great beast. "This woman is mine," the burly man said faintly but in a tone that would allow no objections. The other 3 men heard this and cringed for a moment before one of them said flatly, "Since Boss Zong has spoken, we brothers will naturally have to give some face. But after Boss Zong has finished enjoying her, can we, hehehe, do as you please?" Zong Qi said coldly. "Many thanks, Boss Zong." The 3 people hurriedly thanked him before taking a step back while obscene smiles filled their faces as they prepared to watch. The burly man named Zong Qi stared at Lu Xianyun closely. Using the dim light to see Lu Xianyun's appearance clearly, he couldn't help but nod his head in approval. The highest quality goods. Those blue feather sect bastards finally did something good for grandfather here. "What do you want to do?" Lu Xianyun asked with a calm face. Her phoenix eyes filled with sharp light as she stared at Zong Qi. She did not panic because she knew in such a place, trying to reason with others was useless. Only strength mattered here. Now that everyone's qi had been sealed, and one could only use their physical strength though, Lu Xianyun felt great pressure just looking at the giant iron body before her. "You still don't know what I want to do?" Zong Qi coldly snorted. Then without putting the petite Lu Xianyun in his eyes at all, he commanded, "If you don't want to suffer, do you best to enjoy it?" Ha 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 ha. Boss Zong's words couldn't be more correct. "And I advise you not to provoke Boss Zong, little girl. He's quite skilled in body tempering, so with your tiny frame you can't resist. Just lay back and enjoy yourself, or are you afraid Boss Zong can't satisfy you?" "Shameless bastards." Lu Xianyun ground her teeth and cursed. "Ha, if you scold him like this, you'll only stimulate his animal desires. It's better to just keep quiet." Suddenly, Yang Kai's voice came from behind. Lu Xianyun was startled at first before she became overjoyed and asked softly, "You woke up?" "I never passed out." Yang Kai leapt off Lu Xianyun's back as he spoke and began to rub his neck and abdomen, grimacing in pain for a moment as he muttered, "That bastard really used a heavy hand. He nearly crippled me. Damn it, I'll make him pay for this one day." Lu Xianyun looked at Yang Kai dumbly, completely shocked he had actually not passed out being hit like that. This man, what kind of freak is he? Yan Xiaoran's attack just now was not even enough to rob his consciousness. Just how strong was his endurance? Absent-minded, she even forgot about the dangerous situation she was currently in. "Oh, You have a lover already? Zhongqi stood 10 meters away from Yang Kai as he looked down at him with eyes filled with disdain and mockery. Haha, this friend must be joking. She and I are just friends, Yang Kai explained. Zhongqi coldly snorted. Whether you are her friend or lover, I warn you, scram if you don't want to die. You're quite the arrogant one, aren't you? Yang Kai raised his head to look up at the burly man in front of him with half-squinted eyes. In that case, I should also warn you, scram if you don't want to die. Using the same words, Yang Kai returned the exact same intent. The cell suddenly went quiet. The other 3 men hiding in the dark had their jaws drop as they stared at Yang Kai as if he was a dead man. Suddenly, one of them reacted and called out, "Not good, run. Boss Zong is definitely going to explode." The other 2 were also quite agitated as a look of horror filled their eyes, seemingly recalling some kind of hellish memories as they hurriedly moved to the outer edge of the cell. A moment later, Zhongqi sneered and said, "You're quite funny, but angering Grandpa here will do you no good. I'll give you one chance to survive. Kneel down and lick my shoes. Otherwise, this time next year will be the anniversary of your death." Shit! Yang Kai couldn't help cursing as his bad mood only got worse. Since he entered the Starlight Corridor, he seemed to only run into one disaster after another. First, he had met Yin Lishang who had attacked and tried to rob him. Then he met Senior Brother Ko who had captured him and brought him back to Blue Feather Sect for no reason. After that, he met Yen Xiuran who wanted to steal his artifacts in front of the Bone Prison. And finally, he met this tall, brawny man. Yang Kai suddenly discovered that, up until now, the star boundary was only filled with unpleasant memories. Were all people from the star boundary so cruel and aggressive? Or did he just have terrible luck? Regardless of the reason, Yang Kai's patience had run out. After all these repeated misfortunes, the anger in his heart had become like a raging torrent, just waiting to erupt. This Zhongqi's shameless provocation was like a fuse that set off all the rage Yang Kai had been building up. So after hearing Zhongqi's threats, Yang Kai not only wasn't afraid, he instead grinned with interest. "If I understand what you mean, it doesn't seem to matter if people die here, right?" Zhongqi sneered. "This is Blue Feather Sect's Bone Prison. What does it matter how many people die in here?" "Understood." Yang Kai gently nodded before suddenly raising his head and grinning fiercely. "Then it seems you're quite unlucky." As soon as his voice fell, he rushed in front of Zhongqi in a single bound and threw out a punch. This punch seemed to contain all the anger and dissatisfaction Yang Kai had pent up until this point, his rage soaring to the heavens as his fist flew as fast as lightning. Zhongqi was extremely proud of his burly stature and his great attainments in body tempering, so he did not put Yang Kai's attacks in his eyes at all, simply sneering as he mocked, "Interesting, someone dares to provoke this Zong. I'll crush every bone in your body as punishment." Saying so, he too threw out a punch to meet Yang Kai's head-on. When the 2 fists collided, the cold look on Yang Kai's face turned into a sneer, while the disdain on Zhongqi's face rapidly changed to astonishment, then panic. With a pitiful scream, Zhongqi's towering figure was actually sent flying through the air as the crisp sound of the bones in his arm breaking rang out. Bang! Zhongqi hit the bone bars of the bone prison before falling to the ground heavily. Before he could get up though, Yang Kai had already rushed out like a fierce tiger and mounted him before unleashing a storm of fists. Pung pung pung. Inside the bone prison, shockwaves from the continuous bombardment propagated, creating a war drum-like rhythm that seemed to pound directly on people's hearts. Inside the bone prison cell, the 3 men who were expecting to see a good show had long gone dumbfounded, their eyes bulging as they stared at the sight in front of them in amazement. Lu Xianyun was also standing frozen on the spot, her heart filling with both shock as well as excitement. This could not be helped though. In this kind of place, the stronger Yang Kai's performance was, the safer she would be. Regardless of anything else, she was currently Yang Kai's ally. In the other cells, calls and shouts echoed about. The cultivators detained here were tortured year-round, which had either completely eroded their wills or stimulated their inner ferocity. Many enjoyed watching this kind of bloody fight as it gave them some entertainment in this gloomy, depressing hole. Pung pung pung. The muffled impacts continued to be heard as red blood splashed out, sometimes mixed with bits of broken bone and organs. The commotion in the cell aroused the guard's attention, and two blue feather sect's disciples soon came over to investigate. After they discovered that Xianxia, the guy who had just been imprisoned, was making a display of his strength, these guards just stood by and watched with cold grins, not showing any intention to interfere. After entertaining themselves for a moment, the guards turned around and left. Xianxia was right about one thing. In this blue feather sect bone prison, what did it matter if some people died? The blue feather sect guards had no interest in stopping this. As time passed, Xianxia's pitiful roars and howls began to fade, his curses and bravado giving way to pleas for mercy. However, Xianxia seemed to have devolved into a wild beast and ignored all of these cries. Soon, Xianxia's groans were silenced altogether. When Xianxia stopped and stood up, what was left of Xianxia lay in a puddle of bloody mud, most of his bones shattered beyond recognition, dead beyond any doubt. Xianxia shook off the blood staining his hands before letting out a long breath. He immediately felt refreshed as the depression in his heart was greatly lifted. Xianxia turned to the other three inside the cell next, causing all of them to scurry to the corner of the cell and stare back at him with clear terror filling their eyes, panicking as they worried Xianxia would butcher them next. They were well aware of Xianxia's abilities. Under the premise that everyone's chi was sealed inside this bone prison, whoever had the strongest physical body occupied the absolute advantage in a fight. All three of them had been subdued by Xianxia previously, and even all together, they knew they were not his match. However, this newcomer was actually able to overwhelm Xianxia to the point where the latter couldn't even fight back. It was easy to imagine just how powerful this boy's body was. There was good reason for them to be afraid. Fortunately, Xianxia did not seem interested in fighting anymore and simply walked to a corner of the cell and sat down cross-legged. This made the three breathe a sigh of relief, as if they had just escaped from the jaws of death. Xianxia did not disturb Xianxia either, realizing that his mood was still a bit unstable at the moment. Finding a place nearby, she also sat down cross-legged and began to recover her strength. After some unknown length of time, the door of the cell was suddenly opened. The two blue feather sect guards who had shown up earlier entered the cell, and with cold faces called out to Xianxia, "Boy, get up!" Xianxia raised his eyes to look at them before slowly standing up. Xianxia pulled on his clothes from behind, a worried look on her face. Xianxia just smiled slightly. "Don't worry, I'll be back in a while. They won't dare to kill me." As long as that Protector Bien whom he had never met didn't pass judgment on him, no one in Blue Feather Sect would dare to take extreme measures. Regarding this, Xianxia felt he should thank Protector Bien. After comforting Xianxia, Xianxia turned his head to the three cowering men in the cell and grinned. "If you do not want to die, don't make a fuss. If I come back and find that you hurt a single hair on my companion's head, you know what the consequences will be." The three men had been deterred by Xianxia's ferocity long ago, not even daring to move Xianxia's mashed-up corpse, which was lying nearby, so how could they dare have any improper thoughts now? All three of them kept nodding their heads like chicken pecking rice. "Still dawdling? Do you want to die? Hurry up and get out here," the guards at the door urged impatiently. Xianxia spat disdainfully before he walked out of the cell. Once outside, the two guards swept their eyes over Xianxia for a moment before one of them sneered and said, "I heard that you made Senior Brother Yen suffer a big loss? Boy, you're quite capable, killing Xianxia the first day you arrived. He was a nasty one. For this alone, we brothers admire you a bit. But Senior Brother Yen said that we need to take care of you well, so don't blame us for what comes next. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for having eyes but failing to see, provoking those who shouldn't be provoked." From the way these two spoke, Xianxia quickly understood the whole story. As such, he did not bother responding and simply motioned for these two to lead the way. The two guards glanced at each other and could not help but give Xianxia a big thumbs up as they laughed deeply. "You've got guts." Soon, Xianxia was taken to a dim cell, chained up, and tortured in various ways by the two Blue Feather Sect disciples. It was not until half a day later that a half-dead Yang Kai was thrown back into his cell. After seeing Yang Kai's miserable appearance, Lu Xianyun was deeply frightened, thinking that he would soon be dead. If Yang Kai died, she would become isolated and alone. In this kind of place, in that kind of condition, she didn't even want to imagine what her fate would be. However, contrary to her expectations, Yang Kai, who seemed to be on the verge of death, actually got into a cross-legged sitting position after an hour and entered a state of meditation. By the next day, Yang Kai was once again as mighty as a dragon and fierce as a tiger. Although he looked quite disheveled, his injuries seemed to be mostly healed, and even the scars on his body had mostly disappeared. Even the dried-up blood had fallen off, revealing new, healthy-looking skin. Lu Xianyun found it even more difficult to see through Yang Kai as time passed, and instinctively realized that he was absolutely hiding some unimaginable secrets. This routine repeated itself for the next few days. Yang Kai would endure the torture of the two Blue Feather sect guards every day, then be thrown back into his cell half-dead, meditate, then restore himself. What's more, as time passed, Lu Xianyun was shocked to discover that Yang Kai's condition seemed to be changing little by little, his body actually becoming stronger and stronger. There seemed to be an unimaginable surging power coming from his frame, one that was being suppressed by some incredible force that was slowly being lifted. In fact, this was not far from the truth. The torture the two Blue Feather sect guards administered to Yang Kai had actually caused the starlight he had absorbed in the starlight corridor to quickly merge into his physique, prompting the transformation of his Saint Qi into Source Qi. He had absorbed an unimaginable amount of starlight in the starlight corridor, part of which was fused into his body, becoming a catalyst to transform his strength, but most of it had been stored away in his knowledge sea. This was why, even as a star master, he did not give off any starlight glow. Under normal circumstances, Yang Kai would need to slowly guide the starlight in his knowledge sea to integrate it into his body and promote the transformation of his Saint Qi. But right now, his cultivation was sealed, so he was unable to complete this process on his own. When the two Blue Feather sect guards tortured him the first day though, Yang Kai quickly realized something. When his physical body was damaged and then forced to repair itself, the stored starlight would actively rush out of his knowledge sea and pour into his physique, forcefully transforming his Saint Qi into Source Qi. After discovering this, Yang Kai could not help feeling overjoyed. As such, facing the repeated torture of the two guards, instead of feeling it unbearable, he was actually willing to do so, wishing they would torture him as mercilessly as possible to help speed up this process. Time marched on and soon, 10 days had passed. Yang Kai woke up from his meditation and silently sensed his physical condition before shaking his head, somewhat dissatisfied. The slow rate at which his Saint Qi was being transformed was somewhat frustrating to him. For an origin king like him, the higher the proportion of Source Qi there was in his body, the higher the strength he could exert. At this moment, only about a fifth of Yang Kai's Saint Qi had been transformed into Source Qi, and at this rate it would take at least another year or two to finish the conversion process. Seeing him open his eyes, the three male prisoners in the cell all put on their best flattering smiles, but none of them dared to speak. The brutal and overwhelming image of Yang Kai had penetrated deep into their bones, and they knew that it would be simple for him to take their lives in this place. With him controlling whether they lived or died, how could they not go all out to flatter Yang Kai? Even Lu Xianyun was repeatedly praised and flattered by these three men over the past few days. Although Yang Kai very much looked down on these three who bullied the weak and feared the strong, he kept them around because they were useful sources of information. These three were able to inform him about various things regarding Blue Feather sect and the star boundary as a whole. As Yang Kai expected, Blue Feather sect was really not a righteous sect, but it also couldn't be said to be an evil one. Simply put, the disciples of this sect were unscrupulous and unruly. There was also Daybreak Pavilion nearby, which had many grievances and grudges with Blue Feather sect, leading to constant small-scale conflicts between the two forces as they competed for resources and prestige. Beyond Blue Feather sect, the star boundary seemed to be divided into 4 primary territories split between south, west, north, and east. Each of these territories was unimaginably vast, to the point where even a Dao source master could spend their entire life traveling and still not see everything in a single territory. Within each territory, there were countless smaller provinces. Blue Feather Sect was situated in the Star Boundary's southern territory, Qi Province. Qi Province was roughly 80 million kilometers from end to end and was considered average in the southern territory, whether it was in terms of the number of masters or overall strength and size. In Qi Province, forces like Blue Feather Sect were countless in number. This information allowed Yang Kai to vividly feel the magnificence of the Star Boundary as he realized just how much wider a world it was than the star field. Just the words of these three had painted an epic picture before Yang Kai, causing him to yearn for that broader sky. However, it was questionable how accurate this information was, as these three were just first-order origin kings who had never even left the Qi province before. Still, this information was enough for Yang Kai to digest for a long time. Right now, though, Yang Kai had his brow furrowed slightly as he continued to inspect the changes inside his body. Suddenly, Yang Kai raised his head and frowned deeply. Heh, kid, you're indeed a bit unusual. Even able to detect the divine sense of this old master. A voice suddenly sounded in Yang Kai's ear, one that was ethereal and untraceable. Yang Kai remained silent as he swept his eyes around, but no matter how he looked, he was unable to notice anything from the surrounding prisoners. Don't bother. This old master is locked up in the innermost depths. You can't see me from where you're sitting. The voice sounded again. After being imprisoned here for more than 10 days, Yang Kai also knew that the more powerful a prisoner's cultivation was, the deeper inside they would be imprisoned. This mysterious master said he was imprisoned in the innermost depths, so his strength obviously was not low, at least reaching the Dao source realm. If this weren't the case, it would have been impossible for this master to conceal himself while still using his divine sense to talk to Yang Kai. Yang Kai pondered for a moment before asking, "Who is Senior? Is there something Senior needs to discuss with me?" "Naturally, there is something, and it's a good deed at that," the voice cackled. "Since you entered this place and killed Zhong Qi, this old master has been paying special attention to you. If this old master is not mistaken, you have cultivated any extremely advanced body-tempering secret art, yes?" And so, Yang Kai frowned, not denying it. Since the other party had been paying attention to him for some time now, there was no way Yang Kai could conceal the strength of his physique. "If so, this old master wants you to do him a favor. Senior, please speak plainly." "This old master wants you to free him," the voice's master said. Yang Kai could not help but sneer. "Senior must be joking. Junior is a prisoner himself. How is he supposed to free you?" "Since this old master has made this request, he has a plan," the person coldly snorted. "I can pass you the method to unlock the seals on your body and restore your strength. With your ability, as long as you can recover the use of your cultivation, no one in this bone prison will be able to stop you, and you can easily free this old master." Hearing this, Yang Kai's eyes could not help but brighten up. The mysterious person quickly spoke again. "You do not want your destiny to be controlled by others, do you? This old master's secret technique can definitely allow you to free yourself." The words were spoken in a steady tone, but they contained an almost irresistible charm. Yang Kai almost instinctually agreed, but he was shaken awake in the next moment as he realized something was wrong. This unknown figure was definitely using some kind of mental manipulation technique to influence his thinking. Snorting coldly, Yang Kai snapped, "Senior using such tricks to tempt me. Don't you feel any shame?" The voice laughed loudly hearing this. "Boy, you're better than I thought. It was this old master's mistake. This old master will apologize to you." Seeing him apologize and admit his mistake so frankly left Yang Kai speechless for a while. After a short, dumbfounded silence, Yang Kai said, "Since you have a secret technique to restore your strength, why not use it yourself instead of asking for Junior's help?" The voice snarled, "If I could use it myself, why would I be asking you for help? This old master not only has his strength sealed, he has also been shackled with chains made from spirit-suppressing gold by those bastards and cannot use any secret techniques at all. Even if this old master were to unseal his cultivation, with these spirit-suppressing gold chains, he wouldn't be able to circulate any strength. So that's how it is. Yang Kai nodded faintly. Although he had never heard of spirit-suppressing gold, from the information revealed by this unseen master, Yang Kai could tell that it was definitely some kind of metal used to impede the flow of source qi. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to imprison a Dao Source Realm Master. One more question. There are so many cultivators in this bone prison. So why did Senior choose me? With your eyesight, it should not be difficult to see that I'm not that strong, right? Yang Kai asked cautiously. This old master naturally knows what kind of cultivation you possess. And there are indeed many others in this bone prison who are stronger. But spirit-suppressing gold is impenetrable by source qi. Only brute force can destroy it. So this old master thinks you're the most appropriate one to ask. Hearing what he said, Yang Kai understood why this man had asked him whether he cultivated some kind of extremely profound body-tempering secret art. It was all because of the existence of the spirit-suppressing gold. Many thoughts flashed across Yang Kai's mind. Although he did not know who this person was, or what kind of strength he possessed, Yang Kai himself was currently imprisoned here and didn't even know what kind of fate he would have tomorrow. If Protector Bien sent an order to execute him, Yang Kai was certain Yen Xiuran would happily carry out the sentence. If he could really obtain the method to lift the seal on his body, he would at least be able to put up a fight and not simply be a fish on the chopping board. As for whether or not to rescue the mysterious man, that would depend on how he felt at the time. Seeing Yang Kai thinking through his offer over, the unknown man quickly struck while the iron was hot and said, "This old man will speak frankly with you. This old master is a third-order Dao Source cultivator, only one step away from the Emperor realm. If you can save this old master will certainly compensate you handsomely." A third-order Dao Source realm master. Yang Kai was shocked. Senior brother Ko, who he had met before, was nothing more than first-order Dao Source realm. But that was enough to totally suppress Yang Kai. If it were a third-order Dao Source realm, Yang Kai imagined he could be killed on a whim. Before knowing this person's temperament, Yang Kai did not dare to rashly agree. He didn't want to try to steal a chicken but end up losing the rice in the process. I know what you are worrying about, but you may rest assured, this old master is not deceiving you in any way. If you cannot believe this old master, he can swear an oath on his soul. Yang Kai frowned, pondered for a moment, then said, Junior can feel Senior's sincerity, but this matter, let me think about it before giving an answer. No rush. There is no rush. You can just ponder over it carefully. The man cackled gratingly, not trying to urge him any further. By the way, dare I ask Senior's name? Wu Meng Chuan. Yang Kai silently memorized this man's name as he began to consider the pros and cons between agreeing or not. In fact, Yang Kai felt that agreeing right away in order to obtain that secret technique to lift the seal on his strength wasn't a bad idea. But with his current strength, even if he was restored to his peak, he wouldn't be able to leave Blue Feather Sect. At that time, he would still need to rescue Wu Meng Chuan to make use of his third-order Dao Source strength. However, there was no way to tell what Wu Meng Chuan would do to him once he was free. As such, Yang Kai hesitated to give an answer. Just as he was feeling indecisive, the sound of footsteps echoed outside the cell. Yang Kai raised his head in amazement and frowned slightly. Every day, at exactly the same time, he would be taken out by the two guards and tortured. But the hour had yet to arrive for today's session. Yang Kai did not know what the guards wanted with him to come early today. A moment later, the two guards who had been responsible for torturing Yang Kai appeared at the door to the cell with a strange expression on their faces. After opening the cell, they motioned to Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun. You too. Come out. Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun exchanged a glance but did not try to resist and simply stood up obediently. Lu Xianyun's tender body trembled slightly as she subconsciously thought that she would be subjected to the same torture as Yang Kai. On the other hand, Yang Kai asked thoughtfully, Do two friends have instructions for us? One of the two guards swept his eyes over Yang Kai and grinned. It seems your luck is changing. Protector Bien wants to see you. Protector Bien. Yang Kai frowned. Being locked here for more than 10 days without any word from Protector Bien, Yang Kai thought that the other party was disinclined to even bother with him and Lu Xianyun, but now it seems he was mistaken. regardless of why the other party wanted to see them. Yang Kai knew that an opportunity was about to present itself before him. Turning to Lu Xianyun, Yan Kai found the other party's beautiful eyes had also lit up slightly, obviously also aware of what this change meant. Since Protector Bien wanted to see Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun, the two bone prison guards did not dare disobey. Quickly entering the bone prison, they brought the pair out. "Kid, the deal this old master offered will remain valid. If you have nowhere else to turn to, you can come and find this old master." Just when Yang Kai was about to leave the bone prison, Wu Mengchuan's voice rang in his ears again. Yang Kai continued walking as if he hadn't heard anything and soon departed, leaving only the envy-filled gazes of the other imprisoned cultivators in the bone prison behind. Once outside, Yang Kai immediately felt a hate-filled glare being directed at him. Turning towards the source, he saw a gloomy-looking Yen Xiao. He was responsible for guarding the entrance to the bone prison, so of course he was here. Yang Kai had killed and eaten his treasure-seizing snake, causing Yen Xiao to harbor deep hatred towards Yang Kai. The torture that Yang Kai had suffered these days was all due to his instigation. "Brat, you should thank your good luck that Protector Bien found time to see you. But don't get too comfortable. One day, you will fall into my hands again. And then Father here will show you what a life worse than death really means." Yen Xiao sneered wickedly. Yang Kai gave him a faint, indifferent look, while he was cursing his 18 generations of ancestors on the inside. He hated his lack of strength. If he was strong enough, he would simply kill all these Blue Feather sect disciples on the spot. However, he knew he did not have the strength to fight back, and it would only end miserably for him if he tried to resist. So for now, all he could do was grit his teeth and endure, turning a deaf ear to Yen Xiao's provocation. Good. Senior brother Yen, don't be angry. Protector Bien wants to see these two people right away, so we can't delay." The bone prison guard smiled slightly as he faintly spoke to Yen Xiao before waving his hand and summoning something. It was a flight-type artifact, but completely different from the ship that Senior Brother Ko had used. This flight-type artifact looked more like a chariot and was noticeably smaller than Senior Brother Ko's. However, it was still big enough to easily hold 5 people, and gave off a threatening aura. The owner of the chariot jumped up before immediately waving his hand and dragging Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun up as well. Soon, the chariot turned into a streamer and shot towards the center of Blue Feather Mountain. The journey went by silently. Eventually, the chariot came to a certain mountain peak, at the top of which was a massive palace. After Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun got out of the chariot, the bone prison guard took back his flight-type artifact before moving forward and speaking to the guards outside the palace. "Go in, Protector Bien is waiting inside." The palace guard did not make things difficult and simply allowed them to pass. "Good luck to the two of you." The bone prison guards did not follow, simply smiling meaningfully towards Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun before summoning the chariot again and returning the way they came. Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun looked at each other, not knowing whether this was a blessing or a curse that could not be avoided. So, they had no choice but to bite the bullet and secretly prayed that Protector Bien was not a person who was hard to talk to. At this moment, the two of them still had their cultivation sealed and were incapable of raising a fuss in front of the Blue Feather sect masters. Ignoring the curious looks of the guards, Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun walked into the palace step by step. Inside the palace, at the head of a spacious hall, 2 people were waiting for them. As soon as Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun appeared, the eyes of these two focused on them. In an instant, Yang Kai tensed up as he felt like he was being thoroughly examined, an extremely uncomfortable sensation. Looking towards the sources of these piercing gazes, Yang Kai could not help raising his brow. He found that one of the two in the hall was the Senior Brother Ko who had captured him. He was standing next to a beautiful woman with a graceful figure and a charming visage. This woman wore a light blue palace dress and was lazily lying on a long chair. Her hair was done up in a bun, exposing her jade-white neck, and she was currently fiddling with something in her hand, a faint smile on her face as she looked at Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun with great interest. This woman was extremely charming, a true heavenly beauty, but Yang Kai felt a pressure from her that made him not dare look at her directly. "Is this woman Protector Bien?" Yang Kai was shocked. Are these the two you caught a few days ago? When Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun approached, the beautiful woman asked lightly. Her voice was sweet and sensuous, to the point where it felt like it was gently caressing one's heart, drawing out the inner desires one kept hidden within themselves. As for who she was speaking to, it was obviously Senior Brother Ko. Senior Brother Ko hurriedly bowed his head and lowered his eyes, as if afraid to look at this beautiful woman as he replied respectfully. Reporting to Lady Protector, these are indeed the two who were recently captured. The beautiful woman nodded lightly as her elegant eyes flashed a sharp light, her red lips curving upwards slightly as she said, "Release their seals." Senior Brother Ko immediately formed a seal with his hand before pushing his palm towards Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun. Two streaks of light shot out and pierced into their bodies. In the next moment, Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun both let out a slight groan as they felt their strength begin to circulate again. Hee hee. The beautiful woman suddenly laughed and slowly raised her jade hand under the dumbfounded gazes of Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun. As she raised her hand though, whether it was Yang Kai or Lu Xianyun, they both felt that something had suddenly changed in the atmosphere around them, turning it thick and tense and causing the pair's complexions to become solemn. Senior Brother Ko seemed to have expected this from the start and was not surprised at all, instead just observing the reactions of Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun indifferently. The beautiful woman gently pressed her jade palm forward next, causing the surrounding world energy to condense into a terrifying attack that covered Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun. "What are you doing?" Lu Xianyun exclaimed as such hurriedly bit the top of her tongue and spat out a mouthful of her blood essence onto a mirror-like artifact she summoned into her hands. As soon as the artifact appeared, it split into 2, then into 4, then into 8. In an instant, countless small mirrors were surrounding Lu Xianyun, each one reflecting a brilliant blue light like the deepest ocean, releasing a powerful and imposing aura. She knew that her opponent this time was a Dao Source Realm Master, and likely a peak level one at that, so she did not hesitate to use her strongest artifact to defend herself. She did not even think about contending with the beautiful woman and focused solely on enduring the incoming attack. Yang Kai also let out a roar as he pushed his 5 elements indestructible sword chi, while simultaneously flicking his 10 fingers and releasing all of his golden blood threads towards the sky to intercept the terrifying palm. Chi 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 chi. With a wind-cutting sound, the golden blood threads launched a barrage of attacks under Yang Kai's control, but just like snow in the early spring encountering the scorching sun, they were all melted and blown away. Lu Xianyun also let out a roar of defiance as the mirrors gathered atop her and Yang Kai's heads. Voila! The next moment, the mirrors all shattered, and Lu Xianyun's face turned white as she coughed up a mouthful of blood. The mirror-like artifact reverted to its original form as well, and was now only releasing a dim light. Taking this opportunity, Yang Kai soared into the sky as he gathered all of his 5 elements indestructible sword chi onto his hand and sliced apart what was left of the falling palm, finally dispersing its might. Twisting mid-air, he next plunged towards the beautiful woman who was still laying down lazily on her chair. The beautiful woman did not move at all as she just smiled lightly as Yang Kai approached. Senior Brother Ko, who was standing behind her, made a move at that moment as he pushed his palm towards Yang Kai. This palm seemed quite simple, but there was a violent power swirling about it, and as soon as Yang Kai came into contact with it, he felt his defenses being smashed through like they were made of rotten wood, unable to block any of the impact at all. With a stuffy grunt, he was forced backwards. Lu Xianyun looked flustered as she felt that they were really doomed to die this time. Recognizing this reality, she grit her teeth and pushed all the strength she had as she charged towards the beautiful woman and Senior Brother Ko. If she had to die, she would do so fighting. "Xianyun, stand down." Yang Kai was still mid-air as he shouted loudly, crashing to the ground a moment later in an embarrassing state. Hearing Yang Kai's call, Lu Xianyun stopped her advance, but she continued to stare warily towards the front as she maintained a battle stance. The beautiful woman laughed happily as her beautiful eyes began scrutinizing Yang Kai again before she nodded lightly. "Ko Wu, what did I say? They really were able to block my blow, yes." Ko Wu heard this and bowed his head. "Milady's vision is indeed sharp. This Ko-Wu has nothing but praise. The beautiful woman giggled as her proud peaks trembled lightly. Pursing her lips, she waved her hand lightly and said, "Dispense with the flattery. Although this queen only used a bit of her strength just now, the two of them being able to resist is still quite impressive. It is as Milady says." Ko-Wu nodded again. The conversation between the two was done out loud without any attempt at concealment. So Xianxia and Lu Xianyun naturally heard it clearly. Xianxia did not show any surprise, while Lu Xianyun frowned slightly in dissatisfaction at being toyed with. "You seem to have noticed, yes?" The beautiful woman turned to look at Xianxia and asked unhurriedly. Xianxia wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and grinned. "If Senior really wanted to kill us, why bother bringing us here? The previous attack was obviously a test." The beautiful woman heard this and smiled. "You're an interesting one, little boy. Then, do you know why this queen wanted to see you in the first place?" Xianxia frowned hearing this and quickly said, "Please enlighten us, Senior." The beautiful woman nodded, stretched out her hand, picked up 2 space rings from the table next to her, and tossed them casually towards Xianxia and Lu Xianyun. The two caught the space rings and swept them with their divine senses, quickly showing strange expressions on their faces, because they discovered that these were actually their own space rings, which Ko-Wu had taken away earlier. What's more, nothing at all was missing from them. "What is Senior's meaning?" Xianxia frowned. "If this queen isn't mistaken, you two are from one of the lower star fields, right?" The beautiful woman asked the two with a smile. Lu Xianyun wore a look of surprise as she subconsciously glanced towards Xianxia. Thinking that his status as a star master had been exposed, she could not help feeling a little worried. Xianxia's brow furrowed slightly, but after a little thought, he understood and asked, "Senior came to this conclusion based on the things in our space rings?" "Indeed." The beautiful woman nodded lightly. Only a cultivator from the lower star fields would have so much junk in their space ring. Having all her most precious treasures be evaluated as junk made Lu Xianyun feel quite uncomfortable. But when she thought about her opponent's strength, status, and methods, she could not say anything. Perhaps her possessions really were trash to this woman. On the other hand, Xianxia did not care at all because his space ring was originally designed as a type of camouflage to deceive others and really didn't have anything precious inside it. Compared to the items stored away in his sealed world bead, it was not an exaggeration to say the things in his ring were trash. Smiling indifferently, he continued to ask, "In that case, are the suspicions against us cleared?" The suspicions he mentioned were naturally related to them possibly being Daybreak Pavilion spies. The beautiful woman smiled lightly. But this queen is curious. Which star field are you from?" "Grand Desolation Star Field," Xianxia replied without hesitation. Lu Xianyun felt some surprise but showed nothing on her face. "Oh." The beautiful woman raised her brow thoughtfully. "I have heard of that star field. It seems there is a sect here in the star boundary that is related to them. Is Senior referring to the Netherworld sect?" "We are not from the Netherworld sect." Xianxia didn't know whether the other party was testing her or simply curious, so he simply responded accordingly before smiling coldly. "On the contrary, we have some grudges with the people from the Netherworld sect." "Is that so?" The beautiful woman looked at Xianxia with a faint smile, her pair of beautiful eyes exuding a strange light, as if trying to pierce into Xianxia's heart to see if he was being honest or not. "In the Starlight Corridor, we were ambushed by people from the Netherworld sect." Xianxia snorted coldly, his eyes flashing with undisguised hatred, as if the Netherworld sect was his irreconcilable enemy. The beautiful woman nodded and said nothing. Pondering for a moment, she eventually said, "Since you are not spies from Daybreak Pavilion, and you are from the lower star fields, this queen will give you 2 choices. Please elaborate." "1. Leave my blue feather sect now. The further the better." The beautiful woman put up a single jade white finger and smiled softly. Hearing her say this, Lu Xianyun's expression could not help changing as she almost instinctually agreed. But before she spoke, she glanced over at Xianxia subconsciously and found that his expression was actually still indifferent, so she quickly swallowed down her words. "And the second choice?" Xianxia asked. "Second," Join my Blue Feather sect and become my Blue Feather sect's disciples. Although my Blue Feather sect is not the biggest in the Southern Territory, it still has a stable foundation. By joining, you can gain a foothold in this land and also have a place of refuge. If you encounter any problems in your cultivation, this queen can also answer 1 or 2 questions for you. Is such a good deed really an option? Xianxia's eyes lit up when he heard this and seemed to be extremely excited. The beautiful woman smiled without speaking, seemingly quite satisfied with Xianxia's attitude. Xianxia thought for a while before knitting his brow and asking, I have another question. Speak. The beautiful woman raised her chin slightly, her expression aloof and arrogant. Our strength is not worth mentioning. So why does Senior want to recruit us into her sect? Xianxia asked in a deep voice. The beautiful woman covered her mouth lightly and smiled. Because you are from the lower star fields. Cultivators like you are all worth training. It is just a pity neither of you is a star master. If you were star masters, this queen would give you even more care. So that's how it is. Xianxia nodded lightly. This was something Lu Xianyun had mentioned to him before, that cultivators from the lower star fields all required genius-level aptitude in order to simply reach the star boundary. Once they arrived, they would become popular recruitment targets by big sects, even if they weren't star masters. This beautiful woman's explanation was reasonable. So, what will you choose? The beautiful woman looked at Xianxia and asked, What other choice is there? Naturally, we want to join the Blue Feather sect. Xianxia did not even think about it before agreeing, immediately turning his head and asking, Xianyun, what do you think? Lu Xianyun looked dazed, never having expected that Xianxia would decide this matter so hastily, leaving her somewhat at a loss about how to respond. However, after meeting eyes with Xianxia's briefly, Lu Xianyun nodded. If that is Brother Yang's intention, I will join too. The beautiful woman heard this and smiled brightly before standing up from her chair and saying, Good. From now on you will be disciples of my Blue Feather sect, temporarily under the jurisdiction of this queen. Ko Wu, take them down and arrange a place for them to stay. Make sure they cultivate diligently so as not to disappoint this queen's expectations. After saying what she wanted to, the beautiful woman turned around and left. Ko Wu respectfully bowed. After the beautiful woman left, Ko Wu looked at Xianxia and Lu Xianyun with a smile and said, So from now on, everyone will be fellow brothers and sisters. Senior brother hasn't asked you your names yet. Xianxia greets senior brother Ko. Xianxia cupped his fists with a grin, appearing quite open and friendly. Although Lu Xianyun felt a bit awkward, she too quickly reported her name. After learning the names of the two, Ko Wu said, So it is junior brother Yang and junior sister Lu. Senior brother has offended you too a few days ago, but please don't take it to heart. Senior brother was simply performing his duties. Senior brother Ko is too polite. The previous incident was our fault for being careless. Senior brother need not blame himself. Ko Wu nodded before beckoning to them. Follow me. I'll take you to your accommodations so you can get settled in and familiarize yourselves with the environment. While our Blue Feather sect is not a peak-level existence, it's also not bad. A short time later, after reaching the bottom of the mountain, Ko Wu pointed to the 2 adjacent wooden houses and said, These will be your residences for the time being. Each house has a barrier protecting it and requires an identity token to enter and exit. As for those tokens, someone will bring them to you in 2 days. It would be best if you stay here until you obtain your identity tokens. Otherwise, you might encounter some difficulties if you go out without them. Understood? Xianxia nodded and said, Then what should we do from now on, senior brother Ko? Ko Wu smiled upon hearing these words and said, There's no need to do anything specific for the time being. Just cultivate well. If a mission comes up that you need to participate in, I will inform you. In addition, we are under the jurisdiction of Protector Bien, so we need not pay any attention to anyone else. Just following Milady's orders will suffice. Good, that is all for today. Having said so, Ko Wu turned to leave. Xianxia suddenly remembered something and hurriedly called out, Senior brother Ko, what else do you want to ask? Ko Wu frowned, seemingly growing impatient. Yang Kai leaned closer and asked in a low voice, "Senior Brother Ko? Senior Protector's Cultivation?" Ko Wu smiled meaningfully. "Third Order Dao Source Realm, but you need not concern yourself with that for now. Just cultivate diligently. What Senior Brother says is correct." Yang Kai nodded appreciatively. After Ko Wu left and only Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun remained, Yang Kai's expression suddenly turned cold as he signaled to Lu Xianyun and walked towards one of the wooden houses. Lu Xianyun followed closely behind. The layout of the house was quite simple. One bed, one table, and one chair. Although it seemed to have been vacant for a long time, it was spotless, so the barrier around it appeared to be working properly. After Yang Kai took a seat, he released his divine sense and checked around to confirm no one was eavesdropping before saying, "You want to ask me why I agreed to join Blue Feather Sect, right?" Lu Xianyun thought for a moment before saying, "I did wonder why at first, but after some thought, I understood that this was probably the only chance we have to survive. And even though that Protector Bien gave us two choices, who knows what the consequences of choosing the first option would have been. You also saw what kind of behavior these Blue Feather Sect people have. They're certainly not kind people." Yang Kai sighed. Lu Xianyun also smiled bitterly. "I didn't expect it would be like this when I entered the star boundary. If I had only known. It's useless to regret now, we just need to take one step at a time. As long as we become strong enough, why would we need to fear anyone here?" Yang Kai sneered. "I suppose so." Lu Xianyun smiled bitterly. "Since that's the case, I'll go take a rest first." And over the next few days, everything was peaceful. Because he had not received his identity token yet, Yang Kai didn't dare to walk around at will and just remained inside his house to cultivate. Without the seal on his cultivation, the speed at which his Saint Qi transformed into Source Qi increased greatly. Yang Kai already vaguely felt that he was about to touch the threshold of the Third Order Origin King realm. Before entering the star field, he had spent several years cultivating in the dead zone outside Shadowed Star, using the omnipresent Emperor pressure to increase his comprehension of the martial Tao and heavenly way, which benefited him greatly. Later, he had accumulated much in the Starlight Corridor, so he was now fully confident he could break through to the Third Order Origin King realm. But he was not in a hurry. After all, as newcomers that joined Blue Feather Sect, if his performance was too eye-catching, it would likely attract unnecessary trouble. Therefore, Yang Kai chose to focus on allowing his body to absorb the starlight he had collected and transforming his Saint Qi into Source Qi instead, before striving for a breakthrough. A few days later, Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun's identity tokens were brought over by Ko Wu. With these identity tokens, the two of them had truly become disciples of the Blue Feather Sect, and besides a few restricted areas, they were free to walk around. Yang Kai took this opportunity to tour around and get acquainted with a number of Blue Feather Sect's disciples. Regardless of their temperaments, what Yang Kai was able to tell was that among the Origin Kings here, all of them were natives of the star boundary. After some inquiries, Yang Kai learned some good information. There was no Emperor Realm Master in Blue Feather Sect. There were only 5 Third Order Dao Source Realm cultivators, of which Bian Yuqing was one. This was similar to his original estimates. After learning that Bian Yuqing was at the Third Order Dao Source Realm, Yang Kai had figured that even if there was an emperor here in Blue Feather Sect, there would be only 1 or 2, and their cultivations wouldn't be high, because a protector of a sect would normally represent the highest strength and combat power of that force. In addition to Bian Yuqing, there were 4 other Third Order Dao Source Realm Masters, one of whom was the Sect Master while the others were also protectors. The 4 protectors each occupied one of the 4 main peaks in the sect and generally did not interfere with one another's affairs. Time flew by and soon it had been more than a month since Yang Kai had arrived in Blue Feather Sect. Over the past month, he had basically learned the general situation inside the sect, and during this time, besides cultivating, his life with Lu Xianyun was calm and steady. No one came looking for trouble with them and the sect did not issue them any tasks. Based on this situation, choosing to join Blue Feather Sect was actually a good choice. At least they had a place to stay. But Yang Kai knew that this was only temporary. Anyone who joined a sect would eventually have to contribute to that sect. The reason why he and Lu Xianyun could spend their time leisurely now was that the Blue Feather sect was facing no great difficulties. Once the Blue Feather sect encountered foreign enemies or some other crisis, Yang Kai knew that lower disciples like himself would be forced to participate in the battle. He had no sense of belonging to the Blue Feather sect, so he was unwilling to risk his life for such a sect. What's more, Yang Kai always felt that he and Lu Xianyun were secretly being observed, but this was obvious since they had only just joined the sect and were still being evaluated. Yang Kai did not care too much about this, and he and Lu Xianyun didn't show anything too out of the ordinary during this period. Both of them were always well behaved, so even if they were being monitored, they didn't reveal any of their secrets. In Blue Feather sect, there was a lively shopping district where Blue Feather sect disciples exchanged materials or purchased things. In this shopping district, some places occupied large areas of land and had easy access to the main roads, but these places were all occupied by the most powerful and influential factions. As for the common disciples, they had to settle for using the more remote areas. Early in the morning, Yang Kai and Lu Xianyun would come to the shopping district and walk to a relatively remote spot, where a humble-looking shop stood. Outside the shop, there were already more than 30 cultivators lined up, and seeing Yang Kai arrive, they all cupped their fists and greeted him. "Good morning, Junior Brother Yang. Junior Brother Yang. Please hurry and open the shop. We have been waiting for you for a long time already. Junior Brother Yang. I was here first today. Help me first." All of these cultivators were basically Origin Kings, with a few Origin returning realm cultivators mixed in, but all of them wore the same friendly smile on their faces as they took the initiative to greet Yang Kai. Yang Kai wore a businesslike smile on his face and cupped his fists to the line. "Many thanks, senior brothers and senior sisters, for waiting for so long. Junior brother will begin right away." Saying so, he walked straight towards the shop. At that moment, a beautiful and enchanting young woman walked up in a sultry manner and without any scruples about the eyes staring at her. Directly took Yang Kai's arm and pressed it between her luscious peaks before exhaling a light orchid scent into his ear and whispering, "Junior brother, forget about them and help senior sister here refine a furnace of 9 revolutions Origin spirit pills. Senior sister wants to hurry back and cultivate." This senior sister, the shop has rules, and it is important to maintain a first-come first-served policy. Yang Kai frowned as he freed his arm from this enchantress grip. The young woman did not give up though and continued to press Yang Kai. "Don't worry about that. Senior sister will go and talk to them. I'd like to see if they dare disagree. If junior brother can help senior sister first, senior sister can." Leaning in closer, she whispered a few words into Yang Kai's ear as her eyes flashed a shy yet seductive look that was obvious to all. "Really?" Yang Kai's eyes burst out with green light as an excited expression appeared on his face. "Humph." To the side, Lu Xianyun's pretty face went cold as she glared at Yang Kai contemptuously, a meaningful snort escaping her lips. Yang Kai gave a dry laugh before stretching out his hand and gently caressing the young woman's assets before he said with a look of regret, "Senior sister, junior brother can't break the rules, but if senior sister wants to, perhaps she could come visit junior brother's humble home so we can have a good chat." Seeing that her attempts were all meaningless, the young woman immediately spat disdainfully and snorted. "You won't even do this small favor? Meanie." Saying so, she flung Yang Kai's arm away before shooting Lu Xianyun a vicious look, as if to blame her for ruining her own good deed. Lu Xianyun's expression remained indifferent as she pulled out a signboard from her space ring and set it down forcefully before declaring coldly, "Senior brothers and senior sisters, please line up for your alchemy requests in order. The fee for service is as written here. Please have the required ingredients for the spirit pill you require refined prepared in advance. If the refining fails, there will be no refunds." Everything she said was already written on the signboard, so there was no need for her to deliberately repeat it, but she still took the time to do so. While she was speaking, Yang Kai had already entered the shop and took out his purple origin furnace, closed his eyes, and prepared to start the day's work. After more than a month of getting along, his relationship with Lu Xianyun had become quite harmonious. In this unfamiliar star boundary, although the two were not from the same star field and didn't know much about one another, Having similar situations allowed them to bond. Just a few days after arriving in Blue Feather Sect, the two discovered a problem. They could not obtain any cultivation resources. Although they were already disciples of the Blue Feather Sect, the sect would not distribute cultivation resources to the disciples for no reason. If you wanted to obtain resources, you had to pay the sect for them or find a way to get some yourself. For Origin Kings, Saint Crystals were essentially useless. The energy stored in Saint Crystals could not meet the needs of an Origin King. In the star boundary, there was a special resource called Source Crystals that replaced Saint Crystals. The energy stored in Source Crystals was countless times richer than Saint Crystals, so even Origin Kings or Dao Source Realm cultivators could use them to cultivate. Like Saint Crystals, Source Crystals were divided into high, mid, and low grade. The exchange ratio between each grade was 1 to 10, and they were used as hard currency between cultivators. In other words, if Xianxia wanted to speed up his cultivation, he needed to find a way to earn source crystals to buy resources. However, he was unfamiliar with this place and did not know what to do in order to earn resources. After discovering the existence of the shopping district, though, Xianxia came up with the idea of performing alchemy in order to earn some source crystals. He was an Origin King grade alchemist that had inspired the Grand Alchemic Dao Tone. So although his technique and talent were inferior to a genius like Xianxia, they were by no means weak. Origin King grade alchemists in his native star field were extremely extraordinary existences. But in the star boundary they were quite common. As such, Xianxia did not need to worry about drawing attention to himself as long as he didn't show too much of his real skill. What's more, the identity of alchemist would increase his worth and, in a disguised way, improve his and Lu Xianyun's safety somewhat. After considering the gains and losses, Xianxia did not hesitate anymore and set up a shop in the shopping district after discussing with Lu Xianyun. The first few days were extremely difficult. No one dared hand over their precious herbs to him. After all, the cultivation materials acquired by these Blue Feather Sect disciples were done so by risking their lives. Who would dare hand over their hard-earned gains to an unknown and unproven junior brother? What's more, there was already more than one alchemist offering alchemy services in this shopping district, so there was no need to risk losing everything by trusting Xianxia. After 3 days, Xianxia did not even have a single customer, causing him and Lu Xianyun to become somewhat desperate. On the 4th day, Xianxia grit his teeth and wrote on his signboard that he would be performing alchemy for free and would offer full compensation if the refining failed. Once this advertisement went up, someone was finally willing to give him a chance. In any case, even if the refinement failed, they would be compensated in full, so it did not matter if they gave him a try. While Xianxia was refining the first spirit pill, Lu Xianyun felt as anxious as an ant on a hot walk. After all, she and Xianxia do not even have a single piece of source crystal now, which meant that they wouldn't be able to compensate their customer at all if the refining failed. Waiting for an hour felt like an entire year. In the end, though, Xianxia succeeded. Moreover, the refined Origin King grade spirit pill was of extremely high quality, causing the client to be very satisfied. When the pill was successfully refined, a rich pill fragrance spread out across half the nearby street. The man who received his pill praised Xianxia's ability liberally and promised that if he ever wanted alchemy services again in the future, he would definitely come to Xianxia. Xianxia generously accepted his praise before requesting that this young man spread the word about his alchemy services. The Blue Feather Sect disciple who had just picked up a bargain naturally agreed. That day, Xianxia refined 3 furnaces of pills, all of which were successful and of high quality. The next day, Xianxia refined 8 furnaces. On the 3rd day, the cultivators who came to look for alchemy from Xianxia had formed a long line before he even arrived. Xianxia immediately asked Lu Xianyun to replace the free alchemy signboard with clearly marked prices about how many source crystals would be charged per pill. 1 month of hard work allowed Xianxia to accumulate a lot of source crystals, and more importantly, his name began to spread throughout the shopping district. Almost all the Blue Feather Sect disciples who came to the shopping district for alchemy now knew there was a humble shop in this remote corner where a junior brother with exceptional skill had appeared. Not only was the probability of failure extremely low, but the quality of the refined pills was always top-notch. Those who wanted to ask for alchemy naturally began to flock here, causing this small, out-of-the-way shop to become quite lively. Xianxia also exercised proper restraint, never refining spirit pills that formed pill veins and deliberately failing in the refinements from time to time. This way, he could hide his true accomplishments in the alchemic Tao. A few years ago, when he had caused the grand alchemic Tao tone to sound on Water Moon Star, Xianxia's comprehension and ability in the alchemic Tao had been greatly enhanced. Now, his handling of alchemy was far more dexterous than before, and the various herbs seemed to dance in his hands. His alchemy methods now coincided with the alchemic Tao itself, reaching a realm that few humans could ever hope to attain. As for Lu Xianyun, she was responsible for receiving cultivators who came to ask for pills outside, delivering the herbs into the shop, and taking out the refined spirit pills to the waiting customers. The two performed their own duties with flawless cooperation. After returning from work every night, Xianxia would give Lu Xianyun 30% of the earnings from the day. In fact, according to Lu Xianyun's original idea, she was not even qualified to take 10%. After all, Xianxia was the one performing alchemy while she was only responsible for receiving customers. But Xianxia insisted on giving her 30% of the profits, making her extremely grateful for his generosity. Before he started performing alchemy, Xianxia made sure to inquire a little bit about the Star Boundaries alchemy standards in the shopping district from the Blue Feather sect disciples he had met. He found that the Star Boundaries alchemic Tao was extremely advanced, on a different level entirely to the star field. Among other things, pill condensing was common in the Star Boundary, with an average alchemist able to condense at least 2 or 3 pills from a single set of ingredients, unlike in the star field where one was the standard. The reason for this was that pill condensing arts and techniques were widely publicized in the Star Boundary, and any qualified alchemist was qualified to study them. However, there was an upper limit to the number of pills which could ultimately be condensed from a single furnace of materials. The furnace of origin-grade mid-rank Vibrant Monarch spirit pills Xianxia was currently refining was not difficult for him to successfully complete, and if he went all out, there was even a good chance to produce a few pills that formed pill veins. This spirit pill consumed 17 different raw materials and was not too difficult to refine, but even the greatest of alchemists would only be able to produce 9 pills during the final pill condensing. 9 was the limit for this furnace of Vibrant Monarch spirit pills. This would be true even if it was an Emperor-grade alchemist taking action. Different spirit pills with different pill recipes had different upper limits to the number of pills which could be condensed. If one wants to condense the maximum number of Origin King-grade mid-rank spirit pills from a single furnace, they would need to at least be a Tao Source-grade alchemist. As for Xianxia, his current limit was 6. While performing alchemy this past month, Xianxia had also constantly been familiarizing himself with the pill condensing technique he had obtained from the Grand Alchemic Tao Tone, causing his skills to improve noticeably. In less than an hour, the Vibrant Monarch spirit pills, which were able to quickly restore the source chi of an Origin King, were completed with a total of 6 pills being condensed. Xianxia stuffed 3 of them into his space ring before tossing the remaining 3 into a jade bottle he had prepared. The spirit pills in the jade bottle were for the client, as 3 were enough to meet that person's needs. As for the extra spirit pills, Xianxia pocketed them. This way, over the past month, Xianxia had not only gained many source crystals, but also a variety of spirit pills for various purposes. If he were to sell out all his stock, it would definitely earn him a small fortune. Unfortunately, he could only refine Origin King-grade spirit pills at the moment, as no one would provide him with Tao Source-grade materials to practice with. Otherwise, Xianxia would have liked to try his hand to see if he had reached that level. Sealing the jade bottle, Xianxia casually played with it for a moment as he felt it really was easy for alchemists to earn resources. Just when he was about to go out and meet with Lu Xianyun outside to complete the transaction though, Lu Xianyun's soft shout rang in his ears, followed by a loud clattering sound. Xianxia's face sank as he quickly got up and rushed out of the shop. When he arrived outside, Xianxia scanned his eyes around only to see Lu Xianyun standing nearby with an ugly expression on her face. The signboard, which had originally been placed in front of her, had been thrown to the ground and stomped on by a cultivator wearing a Blue Feather sect uniform, turning it into bits and pieces of broken wood. Outside the shop, all the cultivators who had been waiting in line for alchemy frowned one by one and spread out to observe from a distance. Seeing Xianxia appear, Lu Xianyun seemed to have found a backer and ran towards him quickly. What happened? Yang Kai frowned and asked. He had been occupying the spot with Lu Xianyun for almost a month now and had not provoked anyone as far as he could remember. So he couldn't figure out why someone had come today and smashed his signboard. They said there was a problem with the pill you refined. Lu Xianyun came up to Yang Kai and said in a low voice, "What kind of problem?" Yang Kai raised his brow and scanned the opposite side. They didn't make it clear and just began smashing things when they arrived. Lu Xianyun grit her teeth as a trace of confusion flashed across her face while she stared aggrievedly at the signboard which was being stepped on by the cultivator in front of her. Because Yang Kai was generously giving her 30% of the profits from their cooperation, even though she could not help him in alchemy, Lu Xianyun had been doing her best to fulfill her own role, especially when it came to taking care of this signboard. From the design of the signboard to each and every character which was written on it, she had meticulously created every detail. Every night, after she took down the signboard, she would wipe it down carefully to ensure it was not the least bit dirty before carefully storing it in her space ring. She felt this was the least she could do to help Yang Kai. But now, the signboard filled with her painstaking effort and care had been smashed, causing Lu Xianyun to feel extremely dissatisfied. They didn't say what was wrong and just began smashing things? Yang Kai raised his brows while coldly snorting to himself, realizing that even though he had done his best not to stand out this past month, he had obviously caught someone's eye or perhaps cut into someone else's profits. Otherwise, how could such a scene have happened? Are you the alchemist here? On the opposite side, the cultivator who was stepping on the signboard looked at Yang Kai arrogantly, with a cold smile on his face as he asked in a pointed manner. Indeed. Dare I ask how this senior brother is called? Yang Kai looked at the other party indifferently. Chu Fei, a disciple under Protector Zhu. Yang Kai brow rose, knowing that the Protector Zhu that was mentioned was Zhu Junshan, one of the protectors of Blue Feather sect. This man had the same cultivation as Bian Yuqing, third-order Dao Source Realm, and was not someone Yang Kai could currently challenge. The four protectors did not have a harmonious relationship with one another, and if it weren't for the sect master suppressing the conflicts, it was likely that the Blue Feather sect would have already fallen into chaos. However, it was also precisely because of this that the lower disciples did not have peaceful relationships. In this sect, there were many private and public disputes between the lower disciple factions, with fights often causing injuries or even disabilities. When Yang Kai heard that the other party was a disciple under Protector Zhu, he knew that this person was here to make trouble. So it is Senior Brother Chu? Dare I ask why Senior Brother has broken Junior Brother's signboard? Yang Kai asked in a deep voice. Don't play dumb in front of this Chu. Are you seriously trying to say you don't know what you did wrong? Chu Fei coldly snorted as he said in a stern tone. Yang Kai, however, just shook his head and said, Junior Brother only entered the sect a month ago and does not recall offending Senior Brother Chu in any way. So I hope Senior Brother can clarify his actions today. Chu Fei chuckled, nodded, and said, Of course, since you've said as much, then Senior Brother will make you understand. Saying so, he waved his hand and shouted, Bring him! Immediately, a couple of cultivators came out from behind Chu Fei carrying a stretcher. On the stretcher was a man who looked extremely miserable. His aura was fluctuating chaotically while his eyes were bulged and bloodshot. He was also spouting some cruel and miserable cries randomly from his mouth. Even as he lay on the stretcher, this man was clearly struggling, but his body was bound by the barrier so that he was unable to move. Cultivation dissonance. He's experienced cultivation dissonance, the onlookers exclaimed. The situation of this cultivator lying on a stretcher was obviously the result of dissonance in his cultivation, most likely caused by something going wrong in his secluded cultivation and sending his strength running wild. If his condition was not treated promptly, he would likely degenerate into a cripple. However, cultivation dissonance was extremely difficult to resolve. Only if a master with far greater strength and ability took action could this situation be remedied. This was a situation all cultivators feared encountering, as once they did, it could very well lead to their destruction. Junior Brother, do you recognize this person? Chu Fei asked Yang Kai coldly as he pointed to the man lying on the stretcher. Yang Kai cast him a glance before nodding slightly. I have an impression of him. If I recall correctly, he came to ask for alchemy 5 days ago. As soon as this remark came out, Lu Xianyun's pretty face turned pale. She was no fool and vaguely guessed what was about to happen, so she couldn't help looking at Yang Kai worriedly. So junior brother admits it, Chu Fei sneered. Junior brother Jiang here is a talented man and reached the second-order origin king at a young age. His future was simply boundless and was praised by Protector Zhu over and over again as one of the rising stars of our Blue Feather sect. And Yang Kai looked at Chu Fei indifferently. Chu Fei's face became cold as he said grimly, "But he was ruined by your hands. Junior brother, what do you have to say?" Senior brother surely jests. Yang Kai chuckled and said, "This senior brother Jiang is clearly experiencing cultivation dissonance. How is that my fault? You still refuse to admit fault? How could a dissonance in his cultivation have occurred if he had not taken that spirit pill you refined? You just said yourself that he obtained a pill from your hands 5 days ago." Chu Fei shouted sharply. Hearing what Chu Fei said, the faces of the onlookers suddenly changed. After all, they were all waiting here for alchemy services from Yang Kai. If the spirit pills refined by Yang Kai really had problems, how could they dare seek him out? Instantly, they began to feel a little grateful. Fortunately, Chu Fei had come at this time, otherwise they might have ended up like junior brother Jiang. While it's true he came to ask for pills from me 5 days ago, that doesn't mean his cultivation dissonance has anything to do with me. Perhaps his own foundation was unstable, or he recklessly tried to achieve something beyond his means. Cultivation dissonance can be caused by many things. Isn't senior brother slandering me without any evidence unjustified? Yang Kai looked at Chu Fei coldly. The other party was just a third-order origin king, so Yang Kai had no reason to fear him at all. The only thing that worried Yang Kai was whether someone was pulling the strings behind this Chu Fei. It was impossible for Chu Fei to come and seek trouble with him for no reason. Regarding spirit pills, several other alchemists and shops provided alchemy services in this shopping district, but each of these establishments was managed by Blue Feather sect directly and had no relationship with the several protectors. Senior brother isn't slandering you. Junior brother Jiang came to ask for pills 5 days ago. Then, after returning, entered retreat right away to cultivate. As a result, he suddenly experienced dissonance in his cultivation a few days later. Now, he has become like this. Do not say that this is just a coincidence. Protector Zhu said that junior brother Jiang's talent was first class. So how could his foundation possibly be unstable? Apart from a problem with your spirit pills, there is no other explanation. That's right. Senior brother Jiang looked so happy after he received those pills that day, even bragging he had picked up a great bargain. I tried to persuade him to find someone to verify the quality of those pills first, but he was too anxious to enter retreat. As it turns out, they really were cheap quality goods. I never could have imagined senior brother Jiang would encounter such a serious problem only a few days into his retreat. A Blue Feather sect disciple who had been with Chu Fei chimed in suddenly. The shopping district was extremely lively, with people coming and going constantly. So although the store rented by Yang Kai was located in a remote corner, the incident here naturally attracted countless onlookers. The ones who arrived later did not know the whole story and only saw the miserable appearance of the cultivator surnamed Jiang. After realizing how dark his future would be, they all felt sorrowful and glared at Yang Kai as if he really was a fraud. Many even swore that they would warn their friends not to trust the sham alchemist when they left. Of course, some people realized that the situation was not as simple as it first appeared. But in Blue Feather sect, most disciples were indifferent to others, and since none had any friendship with Yang Kai, they didn't take the initiative to stand up and draw fire towards themselves. Yang Kai saw how the situation was developing and knew that if this matter wasn't resolved properly today, he would never be able to earn source crystals from alchemy here again. That in and of itself was not a great misdemeanor. But what the other party was planning as a follow-up to this conspiracy was not something Yang Kai could simply ignore. Do you have any evidence to prove that this senior brother Jiang's cultivation dissonance was caused by the spirit pill refined by brother Yang? Lu Xianyun asked through gritted teeth. But even her attempts here seemed quite feeble and desperate. Chu Fei sneered. With junior brother Jiang in this condition, What more evidence is needed? Lu Xianyun was speechless for a moment as she turned anxiously to Yang Kai. Yang Kai pondered for a moment before saying, 5 days ago, this senior brother Jiang came to me to refine an Emperor Blood Yang pill. This kind of spirit pill is used to supplement one's vitality. Perhaps it is related to some secret technique senior brother Jiang is cultivating. I gave him 4 spirit pills at that time. Might I ask if there are any of those pills remaining? If there are, we can simply ask another of the sex alchemy grandmasters to confirm whether my spirit pill has any problems. Lu Xianyun's beautiful eyes lit up and quickly nodded. That's right. If there are any remaining spirit pills, we can verify their efficacy. Chu Fei snorted. All the spirit pills were taken by junior brother Jiang. How do you want to handle things now? Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders. Since senior brother Chu cannot produce any evidence to back up his claims, then it is pure slander. As such, forgive junior brother for not being able to do anything. Senior brothers, please take your leave now. It won't be too late to discuss this again when you have some kind of proof. Saying so, Yang Kai turned around to enter the shop. The other party was clearly trying to make trouble for him, so Yang Kai did not want to bother dealing with them again. You want to just walk away? When Chu Fei saw the attitude of Yang Kai, he was furious and shouted, Murder must be paid for with one's life, and all debts require their due. You think you can harm junior brother Jiang like this and just leave? How can something so outrageous act possibly be allowed? Yang Kai turned his head, looked at Chu Fei with a smile and said coldly, What does senior brother Chu think we should do then? Follow me back to Protector Zhu to accept your punishment. Chu Fei shouted. Nonsense. I am one of Protector Bian's disciples. Even if punishment is due, it would be up to Protector Bian to mete it out. What business is it of Protector Zhu? Bold. How dare you speak so disrespectfully of Sir Protector? If such arrogance is tolerated just after you join the sect, how wild will you be later? This senior brother will teach you a good lesson about how to behave like a proper junior brother. Chu Fei had come here in order to make trouble, and now he had finally found a reason to act, so how could he hold himself back? After shouting righteously, he charged at Yang Kai, reaching out to seize him. A powerful Origin King domain burst out and completely enveloped Yang Kai, trying to suppress him in place and causing the surrounding space to become extremely viscous. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed as he also pushed his domain to resist his opponents, while at the same time a golden light flickered from his hand as dozens of golden blood threads shot out and condensed into a whip that slashed through the air towards Chu Fei. Space seemed to be split in half as the shocking vitality contained in the gleaming golden blood whip shot out like a viper, causing all who witnessed it to shiver unconsciously. Chu Fei was also taken aback. He thought that the other party was just a second-order Origin King junior brother who had only entered the sect recently and could be easily dealt with by a third-order Origin King like himself. However, the instant Yang Kai fought back, Chu Fei realized something was wrong. Not only was his opponent's domain not weaker than his own, it actually seemed stronger, able to completely nullify the suppression of his own domain. What's more, the surging aura which came from this seemingly casual counterattack showed that this junior brother had transformed a significant amount of his Saint Qi into Source Qi. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for Chu Fei to feel such pressure against a cultivator who was a minor realm lower in cultivation. The golden blood thread whip that was rapidly approaching him caused a chill to shoot up Chu Fei's spine, and without even hesitating he opened his palm in front of him and summoned out a mirror-like artifact. A profound light shone from this mirror and formed a light shield between Chu Fei and the golden blood thread whip. Pa! With a snap, the golden blood thread whip impacted the light shield and was deflected, failing to injure Chu Fei at all. This mirror can actually divert my attack. But if that's all... A smirk appeared at the corner of Yang Kai's lips. The deflected golden blood thread whip suddenly twisted and transformed into a golden python with glowing red eyes and fangs. Hissing furiously, this golden python shot towards and rapidly wrapped around Chu Fei, capturing him in an instant before it bit into his neck. Chu Fei cried out in pain, and before he could compose himself, Yang Kai had already arrived right in front of him. Covered in five-colored light, Yang Kai brought down his fist onto Chu Fei's face like a great hammer. Chu Fei instinctively tried to resist but was shocked to discover he was powerless to do so. His opponent's strange golden python secret technique and extremely overbearing domain had fully suppressed him, making it difficult for him to even circulate his strength. Honk! With a muffled bang, Chu Fei was sent flying, tumbling several times through the air before smashing into the ground. The audience immediately went into an uproar. Everyone's heart shook wildly as they stared dumbfounded at this battle. The fight between Yang Kai and Chu Fei started and ended so fast that they might have missed it if they blinked. Even Lu Xianyun, who was standing right beside Yang Kai, was unable to help because Chu Fei had already been knocked out by the time she assumed an attacking stance. There was simply no room for her to intervene. Her heart filled with shock as her beautiful eyes stared at Yang Kai tremblingly. She was stunned to discover that Yang Kai was much more powerful compared to when she saw him in the Starlight Corridor. She never doubted that Yang Kai could defeat Chu Fei. After all, he had caused Yin Lushang to suffer a huge loss back in the Starlight Corridor. Although Chu Fei was also a third-order origin king, the Saint Qi in his body had certainly not been fully transformed into Source Qi. So he was definitely weaker than Yin Lushang. Yang Kai was able to cause serious trouble to Yin Lushang, so he would certainly be able to beat Chu Fei. But she did not expect Yang Kai's victory to come so easily. Was his opponent really a third-order origin king? If people didn't know any better, they would likely assume he was only a third-order origin returning realm cultivator. Did this man really come from a low-level star field? If it were not for her encounter in the Starlight Corridor, Lu Xianyun wouldn't be able to believe it. While Lu Xianyun was immersed in her shock, the surrounding Blue Feather sect disciples were also stunned to the point where their jaws were hanging loose. This was especially true of the cultivators who knew that Yang Kai was also a skilled alchemist. They were simply unable to believe their eyes. One had to know that although alchemists also cultivated, their cultivation was generally lower than their alchemy grade because they spent most of their time on alchemy, and even their strength would generally be lower than average for their realm. Yang Kai was able to refine the Origin King grade spirit pills, and was himself an Origin King realm cultivator, which was unbelievable enough. But now he was able to use his second-order Origin King to easily crush a third-order Origin King senior brother. The scene in front of them could not even be called a fight, it was more appropriate to call it a thrashing. Yang Kai's bizarre performance was beyond their ability to comprehend. A disciple with such extraordinary combat power, capable of overwhelming opponents a minor realm higher than himself, and who was also proficient in alchemy, it was difficult to even imagine. The spectating Blue Feather sect disciples now looked at Yang Kai like a monster who would foreseeably receive great attention from the sect and be cultivated vigorously. As for the injuries to senior brother Chu, why would Blue Feather sect care about him? Several people were already making plans in their hearts about how to build a good relationship with Yang Kai so that once he rose to prominence one day, they would be able to drink some of the leftover soup. The other two Origin Kings who had come together with Chu Fei turned pale at this moment. When the battle between Chu Fei and Yang Kai began, they had wanted to go up and help just like Lu Xianyun. But in the blink of an eye, Chu Fei had been laid out on the ground with his face punched in. A scenario completely beyond their expectations. They had thought it would be Yang Kai who was severely beaten by Chu Fei and forced to beg for mercy, allowing them to do what they pleased with him, but reality was cruel to them, to the point where it robbed them of the ability to think. Yang Kai's sharp eyes drifted towards these two next, causing them to involuntarily take a step back. One of them was a first-order Origin King while the other was a second-order. The two of them together would not have been Chu Fei's opponents, so how could they dare challenge Yang Kai? Fortunately, Yang Kai did not seem interested in dealing with them and instead just walked towards Chu Fei step by step, narrowing his eyes slightly as he smiled warmly. Senior brother Chu, we have never met before today, nor do we know anything about one another. Why don't we have a seat and talk about this senior brother Zhang's cultivation dissonance like good brothers? When Chu Fei heard this, he did not dare continue to lie on the ground and pretend to be dead. Leaping to his feet, he tried to put up a strong front as he shouted, "What do you want to do? Senior brother is too serious. Junior brother only joined the sect recently. How could he have any malicious thoughts towards you? Junior brother simply wants to have a nice chat." Yang Kai smiled very amiably, But in Chu Fei's eyes, he only saw the wicked grin of the Grim Reaper. As he spoke, Yang Kai cracked his fists lightly. Chu Fei's face went pale as his eyes stared out from the swollen and bruised face, angrily shouting, "This time, I acknowledge the punishment is deserved, but don't reach out for a yard after taking an inch. Don't reach out for a yard after taking an inch?" Yang Kai's eyes suddenly became cold. "Senior brother maliciously smeared my good name as an alchemist today. If this matter is not resolved properly, how will I be able to offer alchemy services here ever again? What do you want?" Chu Fei grit his teeth and asked. After recognizing the gap between himself and Yang Kai, Chu Fei lost his previous arrogance. But here in front of everyone's eyes, he was unwilling to lose any more face. Otherwise, how would he be able to show himself in Blue Feather Sect in the future? So even if he was frightened in his heart, he could only put up a front and growl back at Yang Kai. "It's quite simple, actually." Yang Kai looked at Chu Fei with a smile and raised a finger. After senior brother caused such a scene, junior brother is afraid he won't be able to continue performing alchemy here in the future. So shouldn't senior brother compensate for my loss? Compensate for your loss? Chu Fei's eyes bulged as he never expected Yang Kai to be so shameless. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. "Junior brother doesn't need too much, just a few 100,000 source crystals." "A few 100,000? In your dreams?" Chu Fei snapped as his face distorted and shouted. "You dare ask for such an absurd amount?" A few 100,000 source crystals was a number that Chu Fei could not even dream about. From when he first began cultivating until now, even counting the ones he had used up, the total number of source crystals he had possessed did not exceed 200,000. Yet Yang Kai was asking him for several 100,000 all at once. What difference was that from asking for his life? Yang Kai's face suddenly became cold as he said grimly, "It seems senior brother has no sincerity at all. Apparently, negotiations have broken down, and in that case..." Before Yang Kai could finish what he was saying, though, he suddenly turned his head slightly, as if listening to something that just reached his ear. Seeing this scene, Chu Fei smiled happily and laughed. "Junior brother, let us end matters here today. Senior brother will remember you. Perhaps we shall meet on some mountain or river in the future." Looking at Yang Kai's expression, how could Chu Fei not understand that a master was sending a message to him? Now that sect's leaders were involved, he was safe. Having said what he wanted to, Chu Fei waved his hand and shouted to his companions, "Let's go!" The other two did not dare to delay and quickly lifted up their junior brother Jiang, who was still struggling, and tried to quickly flee. "You want to leave after soiling my reputation so? How could that be allowed?" Yang Kai's coldly snorted, shocking Chu Fei. Turning around, Chu Fei saw Yang Kai charge towards him and swing a fist covered in five-colored light. A thick domain pressed down on Chu Fei at that moment, completely suppressing his movements, and before he could even let out a scream, he was knocked to the ground again by Yang Kai. As a third-order origin king, Chu Fei was not weak, and even if he hadn't completely transformed his Saint Qi into Source Qi, he should have still been able to put up a fight. However, Chu Fei had deeply realized in the previous confrontation with Yang Kai that he was not this junior brother's opponent at all. So he was unable to muster up the will to resist, and instead just frantically pushed his strength to protect his vitals as Yang Kai's fists fell on him like rain. The onlookers watched this scene in utter shock. Amid the muffled bangs, Chu Fei's wails and moans rang out. When Yang Kai got up, Chu Fei was already covered with blood and lay on the ground twitching, obviously having suffered serious injuries. Yang Kai turned his head, glanced in a certain direction, then cursed under his breath before calling out to Lu Xianyun, "Close up the shop!" Lu Xianyun was taken aback for a moment before quickly recovering and following Yang Kai back to their residence. Wherever the two went, the other Blue Feather sect disciples took the initiative to give way, all of them staring towards Yang Kai fearfully. Lu Xianyun followed after Yang Kai, staring blankly at his wide back, her thoughts still somewhat confused. She had not expected that Yang Kai, who usually looked like a peaceful person, would actually act so cruel and merciless so suddenly. Back in the shopping district, if it were not for them being from the same sect, Chu Fei would certainly have been butchered by Yang Kai. However, after this incident, it was likely they would no longer be able to sell alchemy services in the shopping district again, causing Lu Xianyun to feel a little regretful. After all, the two of them had earned a lot of source crystals this past month. Suddenly, as they were walking, Yang Kai came to a halt, causing Lu Xianyun, who was still in a daze, to almost bump into him. After steadying herself, she quickly asked, "Brother Yang, what happened? You go back first, I've been summoned." Yang Kai turned back. "Summoned?" Lu Xianyun frowned but quickly understood. "Does Protector Bien want to see you? The message you received just now." N. Yang Kai nodded. "It's just a small matter. Don't worry about it." "Should I go with you?" Lu Xianyun asked. "Protector Bien didn't summon you, so I'm afraid you will be sent back even if you came. Just return home for now." Yang Kai finished speaking before flying off towards a nearby mountain peak. Lu Xianyun shouted from behind, "Be careful." Yang Kai simply waved his hand in reply. Halfway up the mountain, a figure flashed in front of Yang Kai and stared at him with some dissatisfaction on his face. "Senior Brother Ko." Yang Kai greeted him indifferently as he cupped his fists. The one who stopped him was none other than Ko Wu. It was also Ko Wu who had just sent his voice to Yang Kai to stop and to come to the mountain to see Protector Bien. "Your courage isn't small. Daring to disobey my order. Didn't I tell you to let Chu Fei go? Why did you still beat him after that?" Ko Wu snorted coldly. Yang Kai sneered. "Someone spat on my face and I have to just choke down the insult? Protector Bien's faction is not so weak, right? If that is really the case, Senior Brother Ko disappoints me greatly. How long has it been since you joined the sect? What do you know? Do you think what happened today was just Chu Fei coming to stir up trouble?" Ko Wu questioned coldly. "Of course I know he was instigated." Yang Kai sneered. "I was just trying to make some source crystals by performing alchemy, but it seems I've cut into someone's interest, yes? Let me guess, Protector Zhu? And Protector Bien doesn't want to have any conflict with Protector Zhu right now? Is that why you wanted me to compromise?" Ko Wu looked at Yang Kai in surprise but soon nodded. "Seems you're not stupid." "Yes, although Chu Fei's actions today were not directed by Protector Zhu personally, they can still be regarded as involving the interests of Protector Zhu. If you want to make money through alchemy, why not enter the Treasure Yuan Hall? You should know that Treasure Yuan Hall has a pill hall inside the shopping district and will protect its alchemists if something happens." Yang Kai spread his hands and shrugged. "I'm poor. If I entered the Treasure Yuan Hall, I'd have to turn over 60% of my income to them. Senior Brother knows I just came to the star boundary and don't have a single source crystal." Fair enough. Ko Wu knew that Yang Kai was telling the truth, so he didn't press this topic much, instead shifting to the next issue. "But you beating Chu Fei today has only given Protector Zhu an excuse to find fault. Do you want to be punished by the sect's laws? Regardless of anything else, Chu Fei is your senior brother. What you did was akin to defying orders from your senior." Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. "Isn't that why Protector Bien has summoned me? I believe an old master like her will solve this appropriately." Ko Wu's face turned dark as he quickly muttered, "Don't mention the words old master in front of Lady Protector, or you'll lose your dog life." "I understand, lady then." Yang Kai nodded. "Forget it. Come with me. I hope Lady Protector is in a good mood today, otherwise, well, best of luck." Ko Wu shook his head and did not continue to scold him, instead just leading Yang Kai towards the top of the mountain. Ko Wu led Yang Kai into the same palace he had visited once before and escorted him to a certain room. Inside this room, there were luxurious and elegant furnishings everywhere that obviously belonged to a woman's boudoir. Bien Yuqing lay languidly on a sofa, her exquisite curves on full display as she rested her cheek on one hand, her eyes closed lightly, her posture suggestive and enchanting. The sofa itself was covered in the pelt of some powerful monster beast, and beside her, there were a few young women in thin robes. These maids were either fanning Bien Yuqing lightly or peeling grape-like spirit fruits and feeding them to her lips. Still others were gently kneading Bien Yuqing's beautiful legs. When Yang Kai entered this room, the first thought that popped into his mind was extravagance. As always, Kou lowered his head and stared straight at his toes while cupping his fists and saying, "Protector Bien, I've brought the little brat you requested." "Greetings, Lady Protector." Yang Kai, unlike Kou, stared straight ahead, his eyes clear and limpid, without the slightest trace of obscenity or desire. Because he knew that a woman like Bien Yuqing was definitely not someone he could socialize with right now. He made sure to eliminate any trace of distraction in his heart, lest she ruthlessly punish him for his impropriety. Hearing Yang Kai's voice, Bien Yuqing, who had been closing her eyes and resting, lightly opened them. From her majestic phoenix eyes, a sharp light flashed, causing Yang Kai to feel quite uncomfortable, as if he had been cut by a sharp knife. The moment Yang Kai's eyes met hers, he felt as if he was staring into a bottomless vortex that was trying to pull out his soul and consume it. Yang Kai was shocked and hurriedly bit his tongue to restore his consciousness. When he looked again, Bien Yuqing's eyes had been restored to their original state. "Boy, your courage isn't small. Just a few days after entering the sect, you actually dared cause trouble for this queen." Bien Yuqing's voice was sweet and pleasant to the ear, but her tone was quite cold and sharp. "Lady Protector, please understand." Yang Kai resisted the uncomfortable coercion and quickly said, "It's not that this disciple was causing trouble. He was simply struggling to resist after being bullied." "Struggling to resist? Haha. I heard that you beat your senior brother into a pulp and that it will take at least 3 months for him to recover. Is that your definition of resistance?" Bien Yuqing looked at Yang Kai lightly. This disciple may have been a bit heavy-handed, but he only acted so to ensure that others don't dare underestimate Lady Protector's faction. If this disciple had silently borne such disgrace, others would begin to think our faction was weak and easy to bully. "Oh." Bien Yuqing raised her brow slightly and said with a smile, "Then, according to what you said, should this queen gather all the disciples and praise you in public, using you as an example? This disciple only did what was necessary. Lady Protector need not pay it any mind." "Impudence." Bien Yuqing snapped and with a wave of her hand released a burst of force that sent Yang Kai flying into the rear wall. "Milady, please calm yourself," Kou quickly soothed. But a moment later, Bien Yuqing actually giggled happily, making it impossible for Kou to understand exactly what she was thinking. Yang Kai hadn't had any contact with Bien Yuqing aside from the one meeting together with Lu Xianyun last time. When he saw Bien Yuqing for the first time, Yang Kai only felt that this woman was very powerful. After all, she had a third-order Dao source realm cultivation, but Yang Kai couldn't figure out what her temperament was. However, in this second meeting, Yang Kai realized that she was a woman who was subject to shifting moods, not someone to be trifled with. Her casual blow had not used much force, but it was still not something Yang Kai could contend with. After smashing into the wall, he felt his vitality roll and his bones creak. When he stood up, he only heard Bien Yuqing's sweet laughter. Yang Kai grabbed his chest to try to settle his roiling blood before turning to look at Bien Yuqing intently. The latter also stared back at Yang Kai with her pair of beautiful eyes, a hint of approval flashing across them as she nodded lightly. "This queen likes men with some spine. Good. You've performed well. In any case, you haven't lost face for this queen." Yang Kai frowned but did not answer. However, Bien Yuqing continued, "Today's matter can be big or small, and this queen doesn't want to give Zhu Junshan an excuse to cause trouble. After all, you only entered the sect a month ago yet dared to commit such an act. This could also be construed as this queen being inadequate in her supervision, so as punishment you are to be imprisoned in the ice cliff for 3 months. That's all." While she had spoken very casually, Yang Kai could not help feeling a bad premonition and asked solemnly, "Dare I ask, Lady Protector, what is this ice cliff?" He had only been in Blue Feather Sect for a month and had yet to hear of the existence of this ice cliff. "The ice cliff is..." Bien Yuqing smiled slightly. It's a place where disciples who committed mistakes are confined, and the environment there, you'll know when you get there." Yang Kai's expression could not help but sink. Kou also turned his head and glanced at him, his eyes full of sympathy, as if this ice cliff was truly a bad place. "Take him away." Bian Yuqing waved her hand carelessly before closing her beautiful eyes again. This disciple will obey. Ko Wu respectfully stepped back before pulling Yang Kai along with him and leaving. Yang Kai naturally had more questions, but seeing Bian Yuqing's attitude, he knew it was impossible to ask her anything more, so he could only turn to Ko Wu. Once outside the palace, Ko Wu let out a sigh of relief. Every time he met with Bian Yuqing, he felt tremendous pressure. Senior brother Ko. Yang Kai turned to look at Ko Wu. Ha! Junior brother Yang. Ko Wu sighed and patted Yang Kai on the shoulder as he spoke earnestly. Don't ask. You'll know when you get there. Senior brother can only say, Lady Protector has shown great kindness this time. After all, 3 months is not a long time. Just enter closed retreat and your sentence will be over in a flash. When the time comes, Senior brother will come pick you up in person. Hearing what he said, Yang Kai felt even worse and became certain that Ice Cliff was a horrendous place. However, unless he was able to cut a bloody path out of the Blue Feather sect now, he had no choice but to follow Ko Wu. Silently evaluating his own strength, Yang Kai could only press down his depression and obey. Ko Wu once again summoned his flight-type artifact, and after the two boarded, the ship flew off in a certain direction at a rapid speed. From above, the buildings of Blue Feather sect flew by in the blink of an eye. As they traveled, Yang Kai began to perceive a bitter chill in the air. After some time, Ko Wu suddenly pointed to the front and said, Junior brother Yang, that is the Ice Cliff. Anyone from the sect who commits a mistake will be confined here. And don't even think about trying to run away. Although this place isn't close to the headquarters, being over 10,000 kilometers away, and is uninhabited, if you leave Ice Cliff without authorization, Lady Protector will know, and when the time comes. Ko Wu did not finish his words, but how could Yang Kai not understand his meaning? Powerless to resist, he simply nodded and stared forward. Somewhere up ahead, hidden in a veil of white clouds, Yang Kai could make out a majestic mountain that had seemingly been split in half. The cut to this mountain was smooth and clean, like a valley in the middle of the sky, a daunting scene to behold. As the ship approached, the severe cold in the air became more obvious, and Yang Kai could feel a stinging sensation on his skin even through the protective barrier. What's more, this icy cold seemed to be mixed with another kind of aura, one that was both familiar and unfamiliar to Yang Kai. Frowning for a moment, Yang Kai soon understood and muttered aloud, Emperor pressure? Ko Wu turned to Yang Kai in surprise and asked in amazement, Junior brother Yang can detect the Emperor pressure here? Have you met an Emperor before? If one had not met an Emperor Realm Master, it would be impossible to know what Emperor pressure felt like. When Ko Wu first came to this place, he had only felt the cold here was extremely uncomfortable, as if it had a suppressive effect on his cultivation, but he didn't understand why this was, and it wasn't until he asked Bian Yuqing some time later that he was enlightened. Yang Kai was a mere second-order origin king from a lower star field, but he had quickly noticed the Emperor pressure which permeated the cold in this place, which was not something just sharp eyes could detect. The only possibility was that Yang Kai had experienced Emperor pressure before and was hence able to recognize it. And there is a restricted area in the Grand Desolation star field where a faint Emperor pressure still remains. That is where I felt it before. Yang Kai replied casually. So that's how it is. Ko Wu did not doubt him, instead just nodding and saying, Each star field supposedly has a guardian that is a high-level emperor. Perhaps your Grand Desolation star field's guardian left traces of their power in that restricted area. But how can there be Emperor pressure here? Yang Kai questioned. Ko Wu smiled lightly. This is related to the origin of Ice Cliff. It is rumored that Ice Cliff was created by an emperor who controlled ice principles. With a single swing of their sword, that emperor cleaved apart Ice Cliff, causing their emperor pressure to remain behind. That was thousands of years ago. Yet the emperor pressure has not dissipated. Why else would this place be used as a place of confinement for our Blue Feather sect disciples? So this place was created by an emperor's sword strike? Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he listened. That's what everyone in the sect says, but whether or not this story is true is uncertain. Ko Wu chuckled. Junior brother, when we arrive, Just stay at the top of the valley and as far away as possible. Whatever you do, do not descend into the valley. The further one goes down, the stronger the ambient emperor pressure becomes. Even the sect master and the 4 protectors cannot reach the bottom of the valley, so with just your strength, you will surely be crushed by the emperor pressure if you act recklessly here. I see. Many thanks for the reminder, Senior Brother Ko. Xianxia nodded. In addition, Lady Protector confining you here is not just to punish you. Although the environment in Ice Cliff is terrible and one cannot remain here for long, if they are able to perceive anything from this place, they will benefit infinitely. Don't disappoint Lady Protector's good intentions. Ko Wu spoke solemnly. Is that so? Xianxia grinned. If that's the case, why doesn't Senior Brother come down with me, and we can spy on the depths of the heavenly way and martial Dao together? No thanks. Ko Wu trembled as a light of fear flashed across his eyes. I've been stuck in this damned place once before, and after just 1 month I nearly couldn't return. What was Senior Brother's cultivation at that time? Third Order Origin King, Ko Wu replied. Xianxia curled his lips hearing this. It seems Lady Protector thinks quite highly of me. This shows that Lady Protector believes your potential is greater than mine. Ko Wu chuckled before he tapped his foot and stopped the ship. Turning to Xianxia, he said, Senior Brother will drop you off here. Go the rest of the way by yourself. I will return in 3 months to bring you back. Xianxia nodded before turning around, jumping off the boat, and rushing towards the top of the ice cliff. After Xianxia left, Ko Wu immediately turned his ship around and flew off at high speed, as if trying to flee from this accursed place. The biting cold seemed to be able to penetrate all the way to one's soul, and not only hindered the circulation of one's strength, but even slowed down their thinking, giving people the illusion that their thoughts themselves were being frozen. Breathing out, Xianxia saw his breath turn to mist as he landed at the top of the ice cliff and involuntarily circulated his chi to ward off the ubiquitous cold. The expanse above the ice cliff was spacious, like flat ground, and in the nearby rock walls were some big and small caves. Obviously, these were crude cave mansions that had been excavated by the Blue Feather sect disciples who had been confined here over the years. Xianxia stood there and looked around. He found that there was not a single blade of grass growing here, causing it to appear extremely desolate. Even the rocks seemed to be frozen into ice blocks. Although there was indeed a faint emperor pressure in the air here, one that contained very profound ice principles, it was not overbearing at all and was relatively easy for Xianxia to resist with his current strength. If Su Yan were here, Su Yan's beautiful image suddenly appeared in Xianxia's mind. If she were here, then this ice cliff would not be an unbearable restricted area, but instead a cultivation paradise. This place contained an emperor's comprehension of ice principles, which would allow Su Yan to cultivate at a remarkable speed. As long as she could comprehend something from the ambient aura here, it would greatly assist her growth. Unfortunately, Su Yan was still back on Shadowed Star. As for Xianxia himself, he did not comprehend anything related to ice principles, so he could only sigh. Shaking his head, Xianxia dispelled these distracting thoughts before taking some time to get acquainted with the desolate environment. The first thing Xianxia did was go to the rock walls and inspect the cave mansions. Since he would be staying here for 3 months, naturally, he first needed to determine if there was anyone else living here. If there were others in this place before entering seclusion, Xianxia felt it best to at least offer some greetings. After some investigation, though, Xianxia determined that there was no one living here except for himself. There were, however, a dozen or so frozen corpses. These people had all died inside different cave mansions in a cross-legged meditative posture. Their expressions all incredibly peaceful, as if they experienced no pain or suffering when they passed away, simply losing all their vitality as they gently slept. This discovery startled Xianxia somewhat. He now understood what the real danger in this ice cliff was. The omnipresent ice principles were able to even freeze a cultivator's thoughts, making them lose their lives without even knowing it, which was why these cultivators had all seemingly passed away serenely without any signs of struggle or pain. After checking all the cave mansions, Xianxia debated for a moment before he jumped down the cliff. Although Ko Wu had told Xianxia not to descend into the valley, since the power of the emperor pressure increased the further one went down, Xianxia naturally wanted to give it a try. Back in the dead zone surrounding Shadowed Star, Xianxia had immersed himself in Emperor pressure and derived many benefits from it. He already had his own set of methods to cope with the suppression of Emperor pressure. However, he did not dare to act rashly and instead controlled his speed to descend slowly. As Ko Wu said, the further down one went, the stronger the Emperor pressure and ice principles became. After less than 1,000 meters, Xianxia was already beginning to feel a little difficulty resisting the biting chill from reaching his bones. Even by circulating his source qi, he was unable to completely protect himself. With no other option, Xianxia had to use his domain. Xianxia had forged his Shi, the prototype for his domain, with the help of the Emperor pressure from the Emperor Garden, and the Emperor pressure of the Emperor Garden was much stronger than the one that lingered in this place. As such, his domain was able to resist Emperor pressure to a certain degree. As soon as he pushed his domain, Xianxia felt much more relaxed. Quietly releasing his divine sense, Xianxia tried to peer into the depths below to see just how deep this ice cliff was, but soon, he was forced to take back his divine sense in amazement, because he found that the ice principles in this place were able to freeze his spiritual energy and divine sense. If he had not retracted his divine sense promptly, he would likely have suffered damage to his soul. After realizing this, Xianxia no longer dared to release his divine sense outside his body. There was only darkness down below, like the giant maw of an ancient beast just waiting to swallow one whole, causing all who stared into it to tremble. After continuing down another 3,000 meters, Xianxia began to hear slight creaking noises around himself. This was a sign that his domain was reaching its limits, and if he continued to dive down, it was likely to collapse. Once that happened, Xianxia would not be able to resist the Emperor pressure and ice principles with just his pure physical strength, leading him to a dead end. Seems this is my limit. Xianxia understood in his heart and knew when to draw back, so he quickly began flying upwards. Although he had not achieved anything for his efforts this time, Xianxia knew that this was indeed a good place to hone himself, so from a certain perspective, he really was thankful to Bian Yuqing. Instead of flying up to the top of the ice cliff, Xianxia chose to dig out a cave mansion at a position 1,000 meters from the surface. This was the most suitable position for his current strength. The Emperor pressure and ice principles filling the air here were just rich enough that he could barely contend with them, so entering retreat in such a position would be of great benefit to his own growth. The excavation of his cave mansion took Xianxia a lot of effort. Ice cliff had been soaked in this icy environment for many centuries, causing the rock to become infused with both the Emperor pressure and ice principles, transforming from ordinary stone to extremely solid ice rock. It took Xianxia 3 whole days to excavate a simple cave mansion. This cave mansion was also only the size of 2 small rooms. Xianxia did not rush to enter secluded retreat, and instead sat cross-legged in his new cave mansion, while resisting the harsh environment and restoring himself. Fortunately, thanks to him recently offering alchemy services, he had accumulated a lot of Origin King grade spirit pills and source crystals, so restoring himself was a quick and easy process. It took a few more days for Xianxia to adjust his state to its peak before he started to work on the most important matter he was facing: breaking through. Xianxia had been at the peak of the second-order Origin King realm for some time now, and his comprehension of the martial Tao and heavenly way had reached a saturation point. In fact, just after arriving in the star boundary and entering Blue Feather Sect, he had the qualifications to break through once more. However, he did not rush to do that. For one thing, he did not want to draw too much attention to himself. He was now under the eaves, so acting cautiously was prudent. Secondly, he wanted to accumulate more so that this breakthrough would go smoothly. Lastly, and most importantly, he had no suitable place to break through. Although he had been assigned a residence in Blue Feather Sect and could use his identity token to open the barriers around it to prevent ordinary cultivators from spying on him, that would not stop someone on Bian Yuqing's level. Xianxia did not want to reveal any of his secrets. This was not Shadowed Star. On Shadowed Star, he was supreme and could find somewhere uninhabited to enter undisturbed retreat with a single thought. He originally wanted to stay in Blue Feather Sect for a while to gain the trust of Bian Yuqing before leaving Blue Feather Sect temporarily on some mission and finding a suitable place to enter retreat and break through by himself. But this trip to Ice Cliff made him change his mind. Wasn't this ice cliff the perfect place for a breakthrough? There was no one else within 10,000 kilometers of this place, and the emperor pressure and ice principles that filled the air would greatly suppress the disturbance caused by a breakthrough. What's more, 3 months from now, if he broke through to the third-order origin king realm and returned to Blue Feather sect, he would have a good excuse to give Bian Yuqing if she asked. At that time, he could simply tell her that he had a sudden inspiration while he was in seclusion in the ice cliff that allowed him to break through, and she would not investigate the matter further. After all, whether he was a second or third-order origin king, he was still of no concern to her. For various reasons, Yang Kai felt that breaking through here was the optimum choice. Regarding how to break through to the third-order origin king realm, Yang Kai had considered it greatly over the past few years and formed a plan in his mind long ago. Inside his new cave mansion, Yang Kai sat cross-legged, while surrounded by about 30,000 source crystals he had earned during this period. These were all the source crystals Yang Kai had on him. Even if he was an origin king grade alchemist and had been selling his services to others for more than a month now, source crystals were not easy to earn. However, Yang Kai figured 30,000 low-rank source crystals should be enough to support his breakthrough this time. Yang Kai did not rush, though, instead reflecting on the martial Tao he had walked to arrive at this place. Originally, he was just a trial disciple in High Heaven Pavilion, but after countless sorrows and hardships, meeting various friends and beauties, he had reached this far step by step. He had not lived many years. Among origin kings, Yang Kai was actually very young, but his life experience was extremely rich and colorful, not worse than those old monsters who had lived for hundreds or even thousands of years. Various sights and scenes from the years flashed across Yang Kai's mind, like he had experienced them yesterday, both vivid and lifelike. Yang Kai's mood quickly became as tranquil as an ancient well. As time passed slowly, Yang Kai seemed to forget everything around him. The icy cold lingered around his body and began seeping into his body, penetrating his 5 viscera and 6 organs. In the cave mansion, a layer of ice gradually formed around Yang Kai, and all signs of vitality, even his breathing and heartbeat, seemed to slowly fade. He gradually became like the dozen or so dead Blue Feather sect disciples, as if his life was slowly being taken away by the frigid cold. However, astonishing changes were occurring inside his body. From his lower abdomen, Yang Kai's source qi and Saint Qi rushed out and rioted inside his physique before flowing back to his dantian and undergoing a miraculous transformation. The biggest difference between a second-order origin king cultivator and one at the third order was not the conversion ratio of source qi to Saint Qi in their body, however. Even without a hint of source qi, a cultivator could break through to the third-order origin king realm. The biggest difference between the two realms was the existence of an origin essence crystal. Only by condensing your own origin essence crystal could one truly become a third-order origin king. The origin essence crystal contained the essence of a cultivator, including all their insights into the martial Tao and heavenly way. It was similar to the monster core of a monster beast. Monster beasts could use their monster core to activate their unique abilities and increase the power of such divine abilities. Cultivators above the third-order origin king realm could similarly do so with their origin essence crystal. This unique existence was a representation of a cultivator's perceptions and comprehensions, and when using it in combat, it could dramatically boost their strength. In a crisis, one could even directly summon their origin essence crystal and use it to kill their enemy, similar to how a monster beast could summon their monster core to battle. If one wanted to condense their own origin essence crystal, however, they needed to first ask a single question: what principle would they use as the foundation upon which to refine it? An origin essence crystal was not all-powerful and could only strengthen a cultivator's prowess and power in a certain field, not improve all aspects of their comprehension. For example, when Yang Kai first entered the martial Tao, he had cultivated a Yang attribute secret art. Later on, he had transformed his strength into his demonic flames, then cultivated his golden blood threads and 5 elements indestructible sword qi. All of these could be taken as the foundation for his origin essence crystal. However, once one selected a base, their origin essence crystal could only strengthen that particular facet of their strength. If Yang Kai condensed his origin essence crystal based on his perceptions of his 5 elements indestructible sword qi, when he used his 5 elements indestructible sword qi in the future, the power it could display would be greatly enhanced. The same went for his golden blood threads. However, Xianxia did not intend to do this. His origin essence crystal had to be condensed based on his comprehensions of the Tao of space. Space force was extremely difficult to guard against and was superior to any other power at his disposal. Since Xianxia was proficient in space force, he naturally planned to follow that path. This idea had not changed once since he came to this conclusion many years ago. It was also for this reason that he did not dare to make a breakthrough in Blue Feather Sect at will. This was his trump card. Bian Yuqing still did not know he cultivated the Tao of space. But if he were to be exposed, Xianxia was certain he would immediately draw the attention of Blue Feather Sect's senior leaders. Even in the vast star boundary, the Tao of space was only mastered by a handful of individuals. From his lower abdomen, the mix of Source Qi and Saint Qi continuously converged and slowly condensed, causing a fiery pain in the process. At the same time, inside Xianxia's knowledge sea, his own perceptions and understanding of the Tao of space began to transform into an invisible force that washed through the fiery ocean. Xianxia's soul was unprecedentedly peaceful as his consciousness focused entirely inwards on himself. In that state of enlightenment, Xianxia's ethereal space force surged, and in a nearly unconscious state, his perceptions and comprehension of the Tao of space slowly expanded. Time flowed forward quickly and quietly. Gradually, extremely obvious signs of space force fluctuations spread from Xianxia's body, shattering the layer of frost covering his form. 1,000 meters down in the ice cliff, extremely obvious space force fluctuations began to burst forth from a certain cave mansion, forming a warped space that encompassed the surrounding region. With cracking sounds, the space around Xianxia began to destabilize. One after another, tiny void cracks began to take shape and briefly swam through the air like dexterous fish before they were repaired by the ambient world principles, only to reappear moments later in a seemingly endless cycle. As time passed, the tiny void cracks began to connect, forming extremely terrifying rifts. It was as if the surrounding space was a piece of cloth that had been sliced through with a million sharp swords. Countless scars extended in all directions, and the turbulent, chaotic space force sent chunks of rock and ice flying all around the small cave mansion. At the same time, dazzling starlight suddenly burst forth from Xianxia's body. Wisps of starlight began to flit about like fireflies. These wisps were the same ones that Xianxia had previously absorbed in the starlight corridor but had failed to integrate into his physique so far, and were instead stored in his knowledge sea. Stimulated by Xianxia's breakthrough, these starlight wisps emerged on their own and began to rapidly catalyze the transformation of his Saint Qi into Source Qi. If anyone else was present at this moment, they would easily be able to identify Xianxia as a Star Master. After all, his current appearance was so obvious that it would be hard for someone to not recognize his status. A rushing force, like a magnificent tsunami, erupted from Xianxia's body, but he remained completely unaware as he continued to immerse himself in his comprehension of the Tao of space. Big and small tears in space continued to form and be erased around him, which were manifestations of Xianxia's secret technique. Exile. A series of pitch-black crescent-shaped blades also shot out in all directions, obviously related to his Moonblade secret technique. Regarding Space Force, these two secret techniques were Xianxia's own creations, so it was only natural for them to appear at this time and place. The sound of metal striking metal seemed to ring out from his lower abdomen as a certain something began to take shape here. This was the condensation of Xianxia's perceptions and comprehensions of the Tao of space. His origin essence crystal had taken shape. At the same time, the aura from Xianxia's body rapidly inflated. Pa 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 pa. All the source crystals he had laid out in advance were suddenly lifted by a mysterious force and burst into pieces. Rich world energy flooded the small cave mansion, as Xianxia's body seemed to transform into a bottomless pit that began swallowing this aura madly. The shackles that kept him in the second-order origin king realm were instantly broken, allowing Xianxia's cultivation to advance to the next level in a single, smooth leap. Things had not ended yet though, as Xianxia continued to absorb the rich, pure energy from the exploded source crystals, allowing him to stabilize his cultivation and build a solid foundation. As for Xianxia himself, He did not pay any attention to the change in his realm, as all his focus was still immersed in his insights into the Tao of space. He suddenly discovered that he had a new understanding of the complexities of Space Force. Another brand new secret technique faintly came to mind. Ecstatic, Yang Kai remained perfectly calm outwards and focused himself even further as he tried to break through the bottlenecks which were hindering his comprehension, so he could bring this new secret technique into existence. Time flew by and a month and a half soon passed. During this time, Yang Kai hadn't even moved, and the 30,000 source crystals that he had taken out had long been used up. His cultivation had stabilized at the third-order origin king realm, and although the Saint Chi in his body had yet to completely transform into source Chi, that was not a process that was supposed to take such a short period of time anyway. However, when he opened his eyes again after all this time, Yang Kai seemed slightly different from before. From his eyes, a piercing light seemed to shine forth, one that could cause space to shift with just a glance. "Is this my new secret technique?" Yang Kai muttered to himself as his thoughts flashed and his figure suddenly disappeared. This was not the same as his instantaneous movement secret technique because Yang Kai had actually not moved at all and was still just sitting cross-legged in place, but if one were to sweep the area with their divine sense, no trace of his existence could be found. Even as just a third-order origin king, Yang Kai would be able to completely conceal himself from an ordinary Tao source cultivator with this secret technique. However, if one were to look with their naked eyes, they would still be able to see a vague, transparent figure that was sitting there motionlessly, like a reflected image in a ripple-filled pond. This was an extremely profound concealment secret technique. Yang Kai's new secret technique partially merged his body with the void, making it almost impossible to detect him. After pondering for a moment, Yang Kai grinned. "I'll name it Nihility." Unlike Exile and Moonblade, Nihility was not a secret technique for combat, but rather for concealment. To a certain extent, it was more precious than Exile or Moonblade because it could save his life in a pinch. Only by surviving could one continue to fight. However, Yang Kai vaguely felt that Nihility did not just have utility as a concealment art, but also had another important effect. Whether this was true or not required testing though. After a month and a half of retreat, Yang Kai had achieved all his goals, which naturally lifted his spirits. Closing his eyes, he began to thoroughly inspect his current condition. Sending his divine sense into his dantian, Yang Kai soon discovered that there was now a hexagonal crystal silently floating there. It was his newly condensed origin essence crystal, the condensation of his comprehension of Space Force. Putting it bluntly, if someone were to obtain this origin essence crystal and then comprehend all the mysteries contained inside it, they would obtain all of Yang Kai's insights into the Tao of space and would be able to use all of space secret techniques. This was no doubt Yang Kai's most valuable treasure. It was not the first time he had seen an origin essence crystal. He found an origin essence crystal in the flowing flame sand field many years ago and was ignorant of what it was at the time. Later, he confirmed it was the origin essence crystal of the Insect Emperor. That particular origin essence crystal was swallowed by Yang Kai's soul-warming lotus, allowing it to evolve into its seven-colored form. Later, Yang Kai had obtained the origin essence crystal of Mad Crocodile Monster King from the Blood Prison. He had also obtained an origin essence crystal at an auction on Purple Star. The appearance of all origin essence crystals seemed to be similar, a multi-sided crystal, but the colors varied quite a bit. Regardless of the color of other people's origin essence crystal, Yang Kai's origin essence crystal was pitch black, to the point where it seemed to be able to swallow all light and darkness. This color matched with his Space Force, satisfying Yang Kai greatly. The more he observed it, the more he liked it. Withdrawing his consciousness, Yang Kai began inspecting his cultivation and the conversion ratio of his source chi. There was not much to say about his cultivation. After condensing his origin essence crystal, it was already obvious Yang Kai had successfully broken through to the third-order origin king realm. But regarding the transformation of his Saint Chi, Yang Kai felt quite dissatisfied. It was only half complete. Although he had been immersed in condensing his origin essence crystal for the past month and a half, he was still well aware of his situation. He knew that the starlight wisps had voluntarily gushed out of his knowledge sea and begun transforming his Saint Chi for him. But now, The starlight in his knowledge sea had almost been consumed clean, but only half his Saint Chi had been converted to source Chi, a depressing reality. The reason he felt like this was that he did not know much about the star boundary. If he knew that it would normally take several years for him to completely transform his Saint Chi into source Chi despite being a star master and absorbing a lot of starlight from the starlight corridor, he might have been more appreciative of his progress. For example, Yin Lushang had taken almost 5 years inside the starlight corridor to transform all his Saint Chi into source Chi. He too was a star master. AIO was also a star master, but if nothing unexpected happened, it would take him a minimum of 5 or 6 years to complete this transformation. Cultivators who came from the lower star fields and were not star masters were even more miserable, needing at least 10 years to convert their Saint Chi to source Chi. This was the normal time span. Even 20 or 30 years was also possible, while spending 50 years wasn't that unusual either. A few dozen years, however, was nothing to an Origin King realm cultivator. The transformation of Saint Chi into source Chi increased a cultivator's power noticeably, so even if one's realm did not change, the strength they could display would still gradually increase. However, Yang Kai took less than 3 months to transform half of his Saint Chi into source Chi, an incredible achievement in record time. The current Yang Kai was more than twice as powerful as he was a month and a half ago. After all, his cultivation had risen by a minor realm, and the percentage of his Saint Chi which had been converted to source Chi had also increased significantly. There's not much starlight left in my knowledge sea. How am I supposed to continue forming source Chi in the future? Some time ago, I overheard some people mention source condensing pills that seem to have the same function as starlight. Should I try to refine those source condensing pills? Yang Kai stroked his chin as he muttered to himself. Source condensing pills, as the name suggested, were specially used to transform Saint Chi in a cultivator's body to source Chi. They were only taken by Origin Kings and were an Origin King grade high-rank spirit pill. Although not comparable to the Starlight Wisps, these pills were the most commonly used auxiliary spirit pill for Origin King realm cultivators. However, Yang Kai had only heard the name of the spirit pill and did not have its recipe, so he was unable to search for the right ingredients to refine them himself. Yang Kai secretly decided that he would go to the shopping district to find out if he could acquire new pill recipes after his confinement was over, including the one for the source condensing pill. The star boundary had far more pill recipes than the star field, so now would be a good time to begin collecting them as they might come in handy later on. However, purchasing pill recipes required a large amount of source crystals. Thinking of his now empty space ring, Yang Kai felt a big headache. He did not expect that he, who was extremely wealthy in the star field, would suddenly find himself broke in the star boundary. Putting aside these depressing thoughts, Yang Kai stood up. As he got up, the layer of frost which had covered his body fell off. Yang Kai casually patted himself off before suddenly frowning, only to smile a moment later. He found that his ability to withstand the severe cold around him had greatly increased. When he had first entered seclusion here, he had done so because he was just barely able to withstand the harsh environment. But now, he found that the severe cold in his surroundings had almost no effect on him. Obviously, this was because his strength had experienced a massive increase, allowing him to easily resist this harsh environment. There was still some time before Yang Kai's 3-month confinement period was up, and now that he had accomplished all the things he had planned to, Yang Kai's mind began to wander again. Arriving at the entrance to his cave mansion, Yang Kai looked down into the dark abyss. A month and a half ago, he could only reach a position less than 5,000 meters below the top of Ice Cliff before having to return, illustrating just how harsh the environment was here. Now that his strength had grown significantly, he was eager to test his limits again. Additionally, if he could cultivate under the thick emperor pressure and ice principles for some time, it would be of great benefit to his mind and body. If nothing else, it would serve as good preparation for when he faced Dao Source Realm Masters in the future. If he could withstand emperor pressure, what would the coercion of a Dao Source cultivator count for? Considering all this, Yang Kai did not hesitate to jump down. Just like previously, the further he descended, the greater the emperor pressure and the richer the ice principles became. The ubiquitous cold seeped into Yang Kai's body and knowledge sea, hindering his movements greatly. Yang Kai did not move quickly as he slowly pushed his limits. At 3,000 meters, he was still safe and sound. At 5,000 meters, he was able to bear it. At 8,000 meters, it became somewhat difficult. Once he reached 10,000 meters, Yang Kai was barely able to hold on. He had broken through a minor realm and converted a large portion of his Saint Qi into Source Qi while also condensing his Origin Essence crystal. Yet it appeared an additional 5,000 meters was all he could withstand. Experiencing this, Yang Kai could only shake his head as he further realized just how horrifying emperors were. With his current strength, 10,000 meters was his limit. Just when he was about to stop and excavate a new cave mansion nearby to further temper himself, an idea flashed across his mind and he quickly became eager to test it out. I wonder if Nihility can resist the frigid ice principles here. Having hit upon this idea, Yang Kai immediately put it into action and displayed his newly comprehended secret technique. Instantly, his figure disappeared in place, leaving behind only a nearly transparent ripple where he once stood. After displaying Nihility, Yang Kai immediately felt the terrifying emperor pressure and ice principles which were threatening to crush him alive disappear entirely. There was simply no pressure at all where he stood. It really works. Yang Kai celebrated in pleasant surprise, but soon discovered a new problem. After displaying his secret technique, Nihility, he could indeed ignore the emperor pressure and ice principles in this place, but after just 2 breaths, the omnipresent emperor pressure and ice laws would overwhelm his secret technique, revealing him again. The surging pressure descended upon him again in the next instant. Standing still, Yang Kai frowned, pondering about what had just happened. Soon he understood. His new secret technique relied upon him expending space force, merging his physical body with the void to hide it from both visual and divine sense probing. Because his body merged with the void, it was also able to ignore the surrounding emperor pressure and ice principle suppression. However, Nihility was by no means omnipotent. After all, the emperor pressure and ice principles here were extremely profound and powerful, not something he could simply ignore. Under the battering of these 2 forces, it was natural that Yang Kai was unable to maintain his technique for long at his current level of mastery in Space Force. Simply put, as long as the power of an attack exceeded his own ability to defend against it by a wide margin, it could dispel his Nihility secret technique. Although this was all just speculation, Yang Kai felt like it was close to the truth. This was an inevitable result, so Yang Kai was not frustrated and instead felt that it was natural. There was no such thing as an invincible secret technique in this world. In the end, everything depended on one's own strength. However, that being the case, Yang Kai grinned and displayed his Nihility secret technique again before immediately teleporting away. The next moment, he appeared another 50 meters down where the ambient emperor pressure and ice principles broke his technique again. However, just as his figure was revealed, before the surrounding terrifying forces could suppress him, Yang Kai once again used Nihility to merge with the void and avoid the deadly pressure. Repeating this process, Yang Kai rapidly descended, completely ignoring the dangerous environment surrounding him. He had only wanted to test out the uses of Nihility, but now he simply wanted to see how deep he could dive into the ice cliff. Coming to his senses a moment later, Yang Kai could not help breaking out into a cold sweat as he stared up and was unable to even see the sky anymore. Instinctively, he wanted to flee this place, lest he make a single mistake and wind up buried here. If that really happened, it would be the worst kind of joke. However, just as he was about to leave, he saw a twinkle of light out of the corner of his eye, like something was gently flickering down below. What's that? Yang Kai kept displaying Nihility as he turned his head and looked down. A moment later, the tiny fluorescent flicker appeared again. Yang Kai was sure that he was not seeing things and there was really something there. After hesitating for a moment, he teleported once more to investigate. However, to his surprise, Yang Kai actually found he had reached the bottom of the ice cliff without knowing it. In these deepest depths, the emperor pressure and ice principles were so strong they could instantly kill an average Dao Source Realm cultivator. Even a third-order Dao Source Realm master would not be able to reach this place. Ko Wu had told him that the sect master and 4 protectors had all come here before to investigate the ice cliff, but none of them had been able to reach its bottom. However, Xianxia's nihility secret technique gave him the ability to temporarily ignore the emperor pressure and ice principles in this place, allowing him to reach this unexplored land. The luminous flicker was not too far away from him, so Xianxia carefully moved towards it while maintaining a vigilant watch on his surroundings, lest some kind of accident occurred. Soon, he arrived at the source of the light. There was no sunlight at the bottom of the cliff, but Xianxia was no ordinary person either, so his vision wasn't affected in any way. Looking around, his eyes could not help lighting up. In front of him, a strange object that looked like an ice flower appeared. This ice flower looked as if it was really carved out of ice, having a pure and flawless appearance without the slightest imperfections. Budding from this ice flower were 3 small fruits. Each of these fruits was only about the size of a small egg and had the appearance of fine ice crystal, a faint light actually pulsing from their surfaces, giving them an ethereal quality. When Xianxia first saw this, he subconsciously thought that it was some kind of ice carving rather than a spirit flower and fruits. But soon, he realized he was mistaken because there was a faint scent in the air, the unique scent of spirit fruit that carried with it both a cool and refreshing aroma. It was obviously a real spirit fruit. In this terrifying environment, at the bottom of the deep ice cliff, Xianxia did not dare to release his divine sense to check, but he could still tell that this ice flower and the 3 ice fruits contained extremely powerful energy. If a cultivator who cultivated an ice attribute secret art could obtain these things, it would be a peerless treasure. They were most likely born here because of the emperor pressure and ice principles. Xianxia quickly drew some conclusions about this ice flower and ice fruits and also understood that they were incredibly valuable. Because the spirit flower and fruits had been nurtured in this unique environment, they now contained traces of the emperor pressure and ice principles present here, which meant that a cultivator could comprehend some of the divine ability the emperor who created this place used, whether they were used for alchemy or swallowed directly. This was a priceless treasure. Xianxia could not help breathing a little bit faster and nearly failed to reactive nihility in time, causing a cold sweat to drip from his forehead. After stabilizing his emotions, Xianxia squatted down and began circulating his 5 elements indestructible sword chi with a thought. Soon, Xianxia's right hand was wrapped in a crimson-red light. Naturally, it was his fire sword chi. It was impossible to pick this kind of treasure without taking some precautions, but all Xianxia could think of was to use his fire sword chi to try restraining the rich ice attribute energy that radiated from the spirit flower. However, he still underestimated the horror of this treasure, and when his hand touched it, the crimson light which was protecting him collapsed on the spot. In the next instant, an indescribable chill began to seep into his fingers and travel up his arm. A layer of frost formed on Xianxia's arm at a rate visible to the naked eye. Xianxia was horrified, and without even hesitating for a moment he roared, "Dragon transformation!" accompanied by the sound of a thunderous dragon roar. A golden dragon phantom suddenly appeared behind Xianxia. This dragon phantom flashed before sinking into Xianxia's body, at which point his right arm transformed into a dragon claw covered in thick dragon scales. Grabbing the ice flower tightly, Xianxia yanked fiercely before rapidly tossing it into his sealed world bead. The next moment, Xianxia inspected the situation inside the sealed world bead anxiously. Inside the sealed world bead, a giant made from stone was meditating with its eyes closed. It was none other than Xianxia's soul clone that had been integrated into the second stone puppet to become his embodiment. This giant mountain-like body stood up and disappeared from where it had been sitting with a flicker to quickly arrive at a different place. This was where Xianxia had thrown in the ice flower. Crisp cracking sounds rang out as inside the sealed world bead, the area around the ice flower rapidly transformed into a frozen landscape that spread out at an extremely fast speed. The terrifying ice principles contained in the ice flower even began to have an effect on the space inside the sealed world bead, causing the temperature to drop slightly. Soon, within a radius of 10 kilometers, a thick layer of ice had formed. Only after extending out such a distance did the anomaly caused by the ice flower gradually subside. Receiving a report from his embodiment inside the sealed world bead, Xianxia finally felt relieved as he stood at the bottom of the cliff. Xianxia was in a good mood after inadvertently acquiring a treasure like this ice flower. While this thing was useless to him, it could be exchanged for a large number of cultivation resources, especially source crystals, which he was currently short on. If he could find a good auction house to entrust the 3 ice fruits to, Xianxia estimated he wouldn't have to worry about source crystals in the near future. But the bottom of the cliff was not a place to remain, so after obtaining the ice flower, Xianxia immediately prepared to evacuate. However, at that moment, a sharp and strange hissing sound suddenly reached his ears, and a thin white light shot over from the distance, whistling like thunder as it carried a fierce momentum with it. Xianxia's eyes shrank as an incredible sense of crisis gripped his heart. Without hesitation, he teleported away. Chi! The snow-white ray of light struck the empty space where Xianxia once stood and proceeded to plow through the ground, sending ice and rock flying in a shocking display of power. Who? Xianxia subconsciously thought that a master had hidden themselves at the bottom of this ice cliff and had attacked him, because the attack just now gave off the feel of a sword Dao secret technique, and the white light was clearly a kind of sword light that contained potent ice principles. However, as soon as he shouted, Xianxia felt that something was wrong. This was the bottom of the ice cliff, and he was only able to arrive here thanks to his Nihility secret technique. If someone else was hiding here, just how terrifying would their strength have to be? Would such a master need to launch a sneak attack to deal with him? Thinking so, he quickly looked towards the source of the attack. In the next instant, Xianxia received a great shock. Slashing towards him was another snow-white sword wave that was infused with rich ice principles that caused space itself to ripple and freeze as it flew forwards. I can't block it. Xianxia instantly judged his situation and did not hesitate to teleport away again. At the bottom of this cliff, he had to divert a good portion of his attention to resist the suppression of the surrounding emperor pressure and ice principles by maintaining his Nihility secret technique so he wouldn't be crushed to death. Now, facing such a violent attack, although Xianxia was somehow able to deal with it, it was by no means easy. After dodging the enemy's second blow, Xianxia finally got a chance to see who it was that was attacking him. Seeing his attacker, though, Xianxia's eyes bulged as his heart clenched and he exclaimed in disbelief, "How is that possible? He wasn't being attacked by another person, but rather by a monster beast. This monster beast had a thick, pure white carapace, possibly from living at the bottom of this ice cliff for so long. A spirit-devouring monster insect? It can't be." Xianxia couldn't believe his eyes. The spirit-devouring monster insect wasn't a species exclusive to the star boundary. It also existed in the star field. So Xianxia was able to recognize this exotic insect. The spirit-devouring monster insect was capable of eating everything that contained energy. Artifacts, artifact armor, cultivators, saint crystals, anything and everything could be gnawed through by this creature's powerful jaw. Even powerful ancient barriers could be consumed by it. There was a legend back in Xianxia's native star field that a swarm of these spirit-devouring monster insects had been sealed on a certain cultivation star, but that after eons of time, they had managed to eat their way through the seal and then caused a bloody reign of terror, nearly exterminating all life on that cultivation star. Of course, this was only a legend, and whether it was true or not was unknown. However, where there was smoke, there was normally fire, so it was not difficult to understand the danger of spirit-devouring monster insects. Fortunately, these exotic insects matured very slowly, and most cultivators also understood how harmful they could be. So once they were found, they were quickly exterminated. Xianxia had also encountered spirit-devouring monster insects before, so he was able to recognize it at a glance. But the spirit-devouring monster insects he had come across before were no bigger than his finger and couldn't cause any harm to even weak cultivators. On the other hand, the snow-white spirit-devouring monster insect in front of him was 4 meters tall and had a majestic and mighty aura to it. Its fierce appearance alone put great pressure on Xianxia. A monster insect queen? Xianxia's face sank. Spirit-devouring monster insects weren't high-level sentient creatures, but instead had a similar social structure to common ants. Among a swarm of spirit-devouring monster insects, there was always a matriarchal entity that ruled over them. The one in front of Xianxia right now was definitely such a monster insect queen. What was truly outrageous, though, was that this snow-white monster insect queen was using its 2 forelimbs to condense a sharp, white sword chi. Xianxia couldn't believe his eyes. At the bottom of this ice cliff, it was already unthinkable that such a huge monster insect queen had appeared, yet it could even use sword chi. What was going on? The two attacks just now, which were clearly Sword Dao secret techniques, were no doubt from this monster insect queen. Even Yang Kai, who was accustomed to seeing great winds and waves and had a wealth of experience, felt like he was unable to keep up with the situation for a moment. Everything he saw before him completely subverted his common sense, destroyed his cognition, and made him unable to find a reasonable explanation. The sentience of spirit-devouring monster insects was very low, and even if one grew for tens of thousands of years, it couldn't evolve to the point where it could use anything resembling a Sword Dao secret technique. However, judging from the power of the two sword waves just now, this monster insect queen's accomplishments in the Sword Dao were not low. That was definitely a Grandmaster-level attack. One more thing that puzzled Yang Kai was that he faintly felt that the two sword attacks earlier gave him a feeling of familiarity. Just as he was lost in thought, the monster insect queen once again raised its limbs and its two small eyes flashed a cold white light before ice principles began condensing around it into a glowing white sword chi. A flash of white light appeared as a pair of sword waves surged forward like a mighty dragon going to sea. Even before these two sword waves reached him, Yang Kai's breathing stagnated as the space around him seemed to freeze. This was sword intent, an extremely profound sword intent infused with ice principles. The surrounding world energy even began to condense into millions of tiny ice blades that madly shot towards Yang Kai. It was as if it had suddenly begun to snow. Seeing this scene, Yang Kai exclaimed in shock, "Clear sky snowfall." The shock in his heart increased several times over as he never expected to see the Sword Dao secret technique in the star boundary. He knew the power this secret technique contained, so he didn't dare to hesitate as he sent out countless moon blades to intercept it. Hong hong hong. The ice principles and space principle collided with one another, causing a series of explosions that shook the entire ice cliff. Although Yang Kai's comprehension of the Tao of space had reached a level that ordinary geniuses could never reach, he was still just a third-order origin king in the end. What's more, this harsh environment at the bottom of the ice cliff greatly suppressed his strength, while simultaneously boosting the Sword Dao secret technique displayed by the monster insect queen. So, as soon as the two secret techniques touched, Yang Kai's moon blades were smashed to pieces, unable to contend with the sword wave at all. The dazzling icy blade tore through Yang Kai's resistance and slashed towards his face. Yang Kai's heart clenched as he hurriedly pushed his Nihility secret technique to its max, further merging himself with the void. Shio shio shio. The countless ice blades and the two huge sword waves passed through the place where Yang Kai was located, directly nullifying his Nihility secret technique. Yang Kai's transparent body was revealed again, and although he managed to avoid most of the attack, he had not been able to completely resist the ice principle's effects. When he appeared again, his face was a shade of bluish-purple, and before he could gather his energy to deal with the monster insect queen, the surrounding emperor pressure and ice principles crashed down on him again. Panicked, Yang Kai quickly used Nihility again to avoid the violent murderous pressure. "I can't stay here. If I do, I'll die." Yang Kai immediately understood his situation, and the instant his Nihility secret technique activated, he madly pushed his space force and teleported upwards, trying to escape from the icy depths. Even if he didn't look back, Yang Kai knew that the monster insect queen was right behind him, because more sword waves were still flying at him from behind. If he wasn't proficient in the Tao of space, which allowed him to instantaneously move from one place to another, he would either be an ice sculpture or a shattered ice sculpture at this moment. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Yang Kai flew up while dodging the attacks from behind in a flurry as a look of incomprehension covered his face. The reason was simple. This Sword Dao secret technique displayed by the monster insect queen had left him at a total loss. After observing the secret technique several times, Yang Kai confirmed without a doubt that he had seen this attack before. It really was clear sky snowfall. This was the secret technique that Su Yen used. Back in High Heaven Sect, Yang Kai had occasionally seen Su Yen use this secret technique, so his understanding of it was very clear. After coming to the star boundary, though, he was now witnessing this secret technique be displayed by a spirit-devouring monster insect queen. How could Yang Kai not be surprised? A monster insect queen using a secret technique was shocking enough, but for it to be a secret technique that Su Yan had mastered was just too much. If it wasn't for the pain Yang Kai felt from heavily breathing in the ice-cold air, he would have definitely thought he was dreaming. What's more, this monster insect queen's mastery and comprehension of clear sky snowfall was definitely far beyond Su Yan's. After all, Su Yan was just a first-order origin king when Yang Kai left, and she had only learned this secret technique a few years prior when she was a disciple of Scarlet Wave Star's Ice Heart Valley. The same secret technique appearing in two different places could only mean that it was somehow inherited by a master who had visited both places. But who could that be? Did this secret technique originate in the star boundary or the star field? Many thoughts flashed across Yang Kai's mind, but he could not find a reasonable explanation. However, he soon recalled Su Yan once saying to him that all the secret techniques she learned in Ice Heart Valley were originally created by Ice Heart Valley's ancestral founder, Bing Yun. Even Profound Frost, Su Yan's sword, was originally Bing Yun's personal artifact. With this connection made, Yang Kai vaguely remembered that Scarlet Wave Star's Ice Heart Valley's current sect master, Bing Long, had told him that Ice Heart Valley's ancestral founder had likely not died because, in the sect's restricted area, only Profound Frost remained, while there was no sign of Bing Yun's origin essence crystal. Could it be? Did Ice Heart Valley's ancestral founder Bing Yun actually travel to the star boundary? The more Yang Kai thought about it, the more he realized that it was possible. Yang Kai didn't know how strong ancestral founder Bing Yun was, but during her reign, Ice Heart Valley had been a super force that was comparable to Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce, Sword Union, and Purple Star. However, over thousands of years, Ice Heart Valley's disciples could not retain the glory of their ancestors, and the sect eventually fell to the point where only a single first-order origin king remained to assume command. The woman who founded a sect that could reach such a height and endure for over 10,000 years could not possibly be weak. If Bing Yun had left the star field long ago and traveled to the star boundary, everything could be explained. The clear sky snowfall secret technique displayed by this monster insect queen was definitely related to Bing Yun, as was the formation of this ice cliff. If Bing Yun was still alive, it should not have been difficult for her to reach the Emperor realm with her aptitude. If that was so, the remnant Emperor pressure and ice principles in this place would very much match with those of Ice Heart Valley. Yang Kai gradually sorted out the context of this matter, but whether his hypothesis was correct or not was impossible to know. At the very least, his guess could explain why clear sky snowfall appeared in the star boundary. As the sword waves continued to fly at him behind, Yang Kai soon discovered a certain point that allowed him to slightly relax. It seemed this monster insect queen was only able to use clear sky snowfall, and it was likely its strongest move. This made Yang Kai overjoyed. After all, if that was the case, he would still have a chance to deal with it. Fortunately, he was proficient in Space Force and was an expert in fleeing. The most difficult kind of cultivator to kill was one skilled in the Tao of space. Whether it was in the star field or the star boundary, this was the case. No one wanted to offend a cultivator like Yang Kai who could use Space Force to come and go without a trace, because if they did and couldn't instantly kill them, it would only lead to great trouble in the future. Therefore, once a cultivator offended such an enemy, there were only two safe solutions. Kill them quickly or exchange weapons of war for gifts of jade and silk. Otherwise, the consequences would be disastrous. From the bottom of the cliff all the way to the surface, Yang Kai walked the line between life and death several times. Because he could not use his divine sense, Yang Kai didn't know exactly how strong this monster insect queen was, only that it was an opponent he definitely couldn't contend with right now. As such, he didn't even think about fighting and focused entirely on running away. However, the monster insect queen seemed to be obsessed and chased after Yang Kai relentlessly, its massive body leaping and twisting with uncanny agility as it scaled the walls of the ice cliff at a pace not slower than its prey. After a full stick of incense worth of time, Yang Kai shot out from the ice cliff like a bolt of lightning and flew towards a nearby peak, finally able to catch his breath. Without the suppression of the strong emperor pressure and ice laws down below, the natural advantage the monster insect queen possessed disappeared and the situation improved. As his thoughts turned, Yang Kai waited attentively while exhaling tepidly. In the next moment, the huge snow-white figure shot out from the cliff and landed a few dozen meters in front of Xianxia. Observing the monster insect queen's hideous face, which was now clear in the light of day, Xianxia couldn't help feeling his skin crawl slightly. Using his divine sense, he scanned the aura of his opponent and discovered to his dismay that it was the same if not stronger than Bian Yuqing's. Emperor Realm? Xianxia paled in shock. Even if this monster insect queen was not a true emperor-level monster beast, it was likely not far off. That was almost 2 great realms above Xianxia. Fighting such an enemy was no different than courting death. Xianxia couldn't help feeling grateful he had not been instantly killed at the bottom of the ice cliff. Just as big beads of sweat were dripping from Xianxia's forehead though, he suddenly discovered something else out of place with this monster insect queen. It didn't give off any life aura, like there wasn't a trace of vitality in its body at all. It's dead. Xianxia couldn't help frowning. Without any life aura or vitality, this monster insect queen could only be dead. But how could something dead act so flexibly? It was even able to use a Sword Dao secret technique like Clear Sky Snowfall. However, if this was the case, it also explained why a near Emperor Realm level monster beast had not been able to instantly kill Xianxia. If it was already dead, it wouldn't be able to display anywhere near its peak strength from when it was alive. Xianxia observed carefully and quickly noticed a long scar on its abdomen, one that seemed to have been caused by a single sword slash. There was still some remnant sword chi lingering around this wound that had penetrated deep into its body. The wound itself was frozen over with a layer of crystal-clear ice, revealing its internal organs, but strangely no blood was flowing through it. It really is dead. Is this something similar to the corpse spirit race with a dead body but a living soul? Was it somehow brought back to life because of the special environment at the bottom of the ice cliff? Since encountering this monster insect queen, Xianxia had been faced with a series of unanswerable questions, but he didn't have any time to ponder on them as, after the monster insect queen appeared, it immediately began to attack. Its forelimb swords condensed a rich sword chi onto them before it slashed forward. The sky instantly filled with thick snow, as if the world was being wrapped up in a layer of silvery white. A frigid, howling wind swept forth with the monster insect queen at its center, and the land within a 10-kilometer radius was engulfed by an indescribable chill. In this world, it seemed the world's laws had been erased and all that remained was cold. Here, the monster insect queen was supreme. This was an emperor's ability to control principles, the very laws which governed the world and moved the moon and stars. Xianxia's complexion changed drastically as he desperately pushed his strength to resist, but he couldn't stop his teeth from chattering as the cold overwhelmed him. At the bottom of the cliff, he had been struck by the enemy's sword wave, and although Nihility had allowed him to avoid fatal damage, he did not escape unharmed. Now, inside this field where the enemy's sword and ice principles filled the air, Xianxia was immediately beset with problems. The eyes of the monster insect queen flashed a strange snow-white light as it cried out sharply. As it screamed, its icy sword intent affected the surrounding world principles even further, causing this originally not-so-cold region to become as unbearable as the bottom of the ice cliff. Xianxia's expression sank as he realized that he was in deep trouble this time. While he was used to challenging opponents with higher cultivations than his own, there were still limits to his ability. Facing this monster insect queen, which had likely touched upon the Emperor realm and was proficient in a profound Sword Dao secret technique, Xianxia couldn't put up any meaningful resistance, even with his great skill. He could almost foresee that when his opponent's sword finally fell, his soul would be extinguished. Facing this moment of crisis, Xianxia desperately pushed his space force to escape, but to his dismay, he found that the surrounding space had already been sealed off by the rich ice principles, making it impossible for him to teleport away. The white eyes of the monster insect queen revealed a cruel glow as it raised its 2 forelimb swords up high and began condensing its sword chi. Standing at the gates of death, inspiration suddenly struck Xianxia and he hurriedly summoned out a certain object, poured all his strength into it, and hurled it towards the monster insect queen. It was a bracelet-like artifact that had countless tiny glowing runes engraved on it and released a thick emperor pressure. When Xianxia threw out this bracelet, The monster insect queen didn't sense anything from it and completely ignored it. But when the tiny runes on the bracelet lit up, the monster insect queen couldn't help releasing a pitiful cry. Its eyes bulging violently as it stared at the bracelet in horror. The monster insect queen's huge body actually began to tremble slightly. The bracelet clearly had a powerful suppressive effect on it. Ding-dang. The bracelet struck the monster insect queen's forehead, and although Xianxia had thrown it with a good deal of force, such an attack was obviously unable to cause any kind of injury to it. However, the aura which radiated from the bracelet was like a bolt of lightning striking the monster insect queen. The rich ice principles and sword intent which had enveloped the surrounding world suddenly collapsed, and the heavy snowflakes filling the sky all shot off in random directions like tiny flying blades. Xianxia's face turned pale as he saw this and didn't dare to remain. Summoning the sealed world bead, he hurriedly escaped inside. The moment after Xianxia disappeared, a whooshing sound rang out as the entire icy domain poured back into the monster insect queen's body and exploded. Hong hong hong. The monster insect queen's body lacked any kind of meat or blood, but its snow-white carapace was instantly riddled with holes, while even the sword chi on its forelimbs collapsed and splashed out. Backlash. Displaying such a high-level sword Dao secret technique but being interrupted at a critical moment had caused all the power of the secret technique to flow back into the monster insect queen, essentially hitting it with its own technique in a completely unguarded fashion. Lala. Above the ice cliff, ice and rock were cut to pieces by the overflowing sword chi, and the entire peak had a layer shaved off. It was conceivable that if Xianxia was still here, even if he had used all his defensive methods, he would have been sliced to pieces and died on the spot. A series of rumblings rang out as the fragmented ice and rock fell towards the bottom of the ice cliff, hitting the rock walls in a chorus of destruction. Only after 30 breaths of time did the disturbance at the top of Ice Cliff gradually subside. It was then that Xianxia's figure reappeared from the sealed world bead. The scene before him caused him to gulp unconsciously as he secretly rejoiced. He had acted fast enough to escape. When he went to observe the monster insect queen, Xianxia was pleasantly surprised to find that it was lying motionless on the ground. It had been fatally wounded and its carapace was now in tatters. Obviously, it couldn't be any more dead. A white light suddenly emerged from the monster insect queen, twisted slightly, and directly condensed into the appearance of a long sword. In form, it looked quite similar to Su Yan's profound frost. What the hell is that? Xianxia frowned and was just about to take a closer look when the snow-white light shot directly towards him, releasing a frightening ice-cold aura. However, the pressure from this snow-white sword was nowhere near as terrifying as the monster insect queen's had been. Xianxia grit his teeth, lifted his sealed world bead, and released his divine sense like a tide to wrap up the snow-white light as he shouted, "Come!" The next moment, the snow-white light wrapped by Xianxia divine sense was pulled into the sealed world bead. Atop the ice cliff, the tranquility that had lasted for thousands of years was finally restored as the snow-white light disappeared. Xianxia paled slightly as he gasped for breath and took a few steps forward, picking up the bracelet artifact that had been thrown out before. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief from having survived. This time, he was able to overcome extreme danger and cause the monster insect queen to suffer a severe backlash from its own secret technique, thus killing it, all thanks to the power of this bracelet artifact. The Emperor Artifact, Insect Enslavement Bracelet. This was the Insect Emperor's artifact, and was capable of restraining all species of exotic insects. The Insect Emperor had been killed by Xianxia after much difficulty on Shadowed Star, and his two Emperor artifacts now belonged to Xianxia. In addition to this Insect Enslavement Bracelet, which was the Insect Emperor's most recognized artifact, there was also the Soul-Splitting Saber. However, the grades of these two Emperor artifacts were too high and could not be properly utilized or even refined by Xianxia currently. These two Emperor artifacts had always been hidden inside Xianxia's sealed world bead, while the Soul-Splitting Saber had never even been used. As for the Insect Enslavement Bracelet, this was only the second time Xianxia had taken it out since obtaining it. The previous time was in the Severed World when Xianxia and Shui were being chased down by countless illusory butterflies. At that time, Xianxia had used the magical effects of the insect enslavement bracelet to easily suppress those butterflies, which could even cause difficulty to powerful origin kings. From that experience, Xianxia realized this insect enslavement bracelet still had its uses even if he had yet to refine it. It was also just a flash of inspiration when he suddenly remembered this special artifact a moment ago, and with nothing else to lose took it out to try, the effects far surpassing his expectations. Looking at the insect enslavement bracelet for a moment, Xianxia felt a bit suspicious, because even if the insect enslavement bracelet was an artifact that the insect emperor once possessed, and it had a natural suppressive effect on exotic insects, the monster insect queen was not weak after all. How could it suppress it to the point where it died of a simple backlash? Xianxia could not figure it out. Sometime later, he put away the insect enslavement bracelet and his figure flickered, disappearing from where he stood to enter the small sealed world of the sealed world bead. After releasing his divine sense, Xianxia quickly found where the snow-white light which appeared from the monster insect queen was. Disappearing again, Xianxia instantly arrived at a different place in the small sealed world. Here, the mountains and rivers were serene and peaceful, with only the white light flying around aimlessly in its long sword shape. Xianxia decided to first conceal himself and observe to see what would happen. Now that he had collected this thing into the sealed world bead, Xianxia had full control over it. Even if it had the strength of an emperor, Xianxia did not need to fear it. The more he observed this thing, the more Xianxia felt it was shaped similar to Su Yan's profound frost, which also bolstered Xianxia's previous speculations about Iceheart Valley's ancestral founder Bing Yun. Is it the soul of that monster insect queen? Xianxia thought secretly but soon dismissed the idea. This sword-shaped snow-white light was indeed somewhat similar to a soul, composed entirely of energy with a trace of chaotic consciousness, but it was definitely not the soul of the monster insect queen. On the other hand, Xianxia felt an incredibly profound sword intent radiating from it. Just what the hell is this? After some time, Xianxia determined that it could not pose any threat to him after this thing had left the body of the monster insect queen, so he decided to appear before it. Just as Xianxia appeared, the sword-shaped snow-white light suddenly pulsed, releasing rich ice principles and sword intent as it pointed its tip towards him. Don't get presumptuous. Xianxia slowly shook his head as he stretched out his hand with a flick of his wrist, controlled the surrounding principles to shatter the ice principles and sword intent coming from the light. Inside the sealed world bead, just like back on Shadowed Star, Xianxia was the supreme master and could change anything he wanted to at will with just a single thought. An opponent trying to fight with him here was the height of foolishness. The strange snow-white light obviously did not realize this though and was not discouraged by Xianxia dispelling its ultimate move so easily. Without pause, it tried again to display its clear sky snowfall technique. Stop causing trouble. Xianxia spat disdainfully before reaching out and condensing a rope of pure energy that tightly bound the light. Waving his hand once more, the shackled snow-white light immediately flew to his hand. Xianxia closed his eyes and began carefully probing it. He was very curious about what this thing really was. As time passed, Xianxia's calm and tranquil look gradually changed, becoming astonished, surprised, shocked, and eventually joyous. After a long time, he opened his eyes and a look of utter disbelief covered his face as he stared down at the snow-white light that was still struggling to escape its restraints. Ascension sword intent? Can such a thing really exist in this world? Xianxia was astonished. This snow-white sword-shaped light was not the soul of the monster insect queen, nor was it the soul of any living creature. Instead, it was formed from the residual clear sky snowfall sword Dao secret technique sword intent that had somehow achieved a level of independent consciousness. In this world, not all creatures required a flesh and blood body to be considered alive and sentient. Some trees, stones, and even spirit pills that absorbed enough world energy over a long enough period of time would be able to obtain sentience. Examples of such things were the variety of world spirit treasures and pill spirits. The world was incredibly vast, so such wonders existed. However, Xianxia had never imagined that the sword intent of a secret technique could also give birth to a conscious will. This snow-white sword-shaped light was surprisingly the sword intent of the clear sky snowfall secret technique which, after countless years of tempering under the rich emperor pressure and ice principles of the ice cliff, had obtained sentience. To put it bluntly, this was a living sword intent. Just how profound a comprehension of the sword Tao did the master who unleashed this secret technique possess to allow the mere sword intent of it to produce such a bizarre evolution? However, this also explained in a certain sense why it couldn't bring out the real power of an emperor. The monster insect queen had died long ago, likely killed by that very emperor in a single move, and only because of the special environment and its strong body did it manage to maintain its original form. Afterwards, the sword intent that lingered in its fatal wound had given birth to a chaotic will and instinctively attached itself to the monster insect queen. This was not like seizing control of a body by consuming and replacing its soul, but rather like controlling the body of the monster insect queen as a puppet, making it impossible to draw out its full power. This also explained why it could only use clear sky snowfall, and all its techniques seemed to be variations of this secret technique. Fundamentally, this sentient sword intent was the essence of clear sky snowfall, so aside from clear sky snowfall, it naturally did not know anything else. What's more, it obviously had not completely integrated with the monster insect queen, so under the suppression of the insect enslavement bracelet, it was directly driven out of its body. Suddenly being separated from this sentient sword intent, the monster insect queen's body lost all ability to control the attack it was condensing at that moment, so experiencing a total backlash was understandable. Many of the incomprehensible events from earlier became clear after Xianxia learned about the true nature of this snow-white sword-shaped light. Looking down at the struggling sword intent in his hand, Xianxia knit his brow. Undeniably, this was a very precious treasure. After all, it was a sentient sword intent, so if it could be refined and consumed, it would be the equivalent of comprehending an Emperor Realm Master's full understanding of this secret technique. Even Xianxia was a little moved. Although he currently had many secret techniques, having one more would boost his options when facing enemies in combat. However, if he wanted to use such a secret technique, he needed to first cultivate an ice attribute secret art or be able to manipulate ice principles. Xianxia did not have the slightest experience controlling ice attribute energy, so even if he were to refine this sentient sword intent, he would be unable to use clear sky snowfall to any reasonable degree. It would be wonderful if Su Yan was here, Xianxia sighed. He could not refine it, but he couldn't let it remain in the small sealed world either. After all, his medicine garden was inside this small sealed world with all the herbs and spirit medicines he had accumulated. If this unruly fellow were to find the medicine garden and freeze everything inside it, Xianxia would have nowhere to cry. How troublesome! Xianxia frowned as he was unable to refine this thing, unable to let it stay, and unwilling to simply throw it away. Scratching his head for a while, he could not come up with a good solution to the problem at hand. Just when he was feeling at his wit's end, an idea suddenly popped into his head. Xianxia immediately smiled and carefully began to consider the possible gains and losses. A moment later, he made up his mind and felt that this was indeed a good idea. Not only would it not waste the sentient sword intent, but it could also boost his strength dramatically in the short run. Considering all this, he no longer hesitated and exited the sealed world bead. Looking left and right, Xianxia quickly found the carcass of the monster insect queen, which was riddled with the backlash from the clear sky snowfall secret technique. Rushing over, he quickly tossed the monster insect queen's body into the sealed world bead before following after it. Standing in a large clearing, the bound sword intent suspended nearby, and the huge snow-white monster insect queen in front of him, Xianxia grinned and stretched out his hand. Although this sword intent had its own consciousness, it was still in a chaotic state and was unable to communicate meaningfully. As such, it only possessed the basic instincts to fight and kill, so Xianxia did not bother trying to reason with it and directly bound it with his divine sense. Xianxia wanted to leave his soul imprint on this sword intent. By doing so, he would be able to command it and make it obey his instructions. This was no different from controlling a cultivator by marking their soul. It was just that his target this time was a chaotic consciousness, which would not actively cooperate. However, it was precisely because this sword intent sentience was so limited that Xianxia could control it completely. Spiritual energy pouring out, Xianxia tried his best to burn his will into the sentient sword intent. During the process, he encountered a lot of resistance, and Xianxia's divine sense was damaged quite a bit, But one side in this contest was acting on instinct while the other was acting purposefully. In the end, the sentient sword intent was defeated by Yang Kai's methods and successfully engraved with Yang Kai's soul imprint. Marking this sword intent with his soul was only the first step. After completing this, Yang Kai released the bindings on the sentient sword intent, and it no longer displayed any hostility towards him, even giving off a feeling of intimacy instead. The white light of its long sword form hovered around Yang Kai continuously, like a newborn baby that had just opened its eyes for the first time to see its parents. No longer did it threaten Yang Kai. Rather, it obeyed all of Yang Kai's various orders without hesitation. Yang Kai didn't pay it any more mind and simply let it fly around next to him before closing his eyes and restoring his spiritual energy. One day later, having restored himself to his peak, Yang Kai opened his eyes and found that the sword intent had already stopped flying around and was now resting quietly on his shoulder. "Come, I'll give you a new body." Although Yang Kai knew that there was no point in trying to communicate with it, he couldn't help talking out loud. As soon as his words fell, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the sword intent before immediately reaching out with his other hand and winding several golden blood threads around it. The sword intent seemed to want to resist, but under Yang Kai's reassurances, it quickly calmed down. Soon after, the snow-white sentient sword intent was wrapped up in golden blood threads, and a massive surge of vitality flowed into it. Half a day later, the originally snow-white sentient sword intent had taken on a vibrant golden glow. At this moment, the sword intent was no longer just an aggregation of pure energy, but had an obvious vitality due to the infusion of golden blood threads. It was not an exaggeration to say that it now possessed its own simple body. With the golden blood threads as its physical form and the sword intent as its soul, this sentient sword intent was now a living creature, in a sense. Yang Kai wasn't finished yet though, and with a thought, the golden sword intent flickered and shot directly into the body of the monster insect queen. Lying on the ground, the monster insect queen, which had no vitality at all, immediately underwent a significant transformation. The snow-white body took on a brilliant golden glow and was rapidly being repaired under the influence of the massive amount of vitality. The original damage from the secret technique backlash was now being restored at a rapid rate. There were obvious power fluctuations now emanating from the monster insect queen's body. The white eyes, which had been dull and lifeless, now began to faintly glow. Yang Kai paid close attention to the changes in the monster insect queen and to the degree of integration between the sentient sword intent and its former host. The method he was displaying right now was completely different from the previous sword intent's control of the monster insect queen. Before, the sword intent had simply attached itself to this body and controlled it like a puppet. Yang Kai was using his method of condensing blood beasts to integrate the sword intent into the monster insect queen's body. If he was successful, Yang Kai would immediately obtain an extremely powerful blood beast. As for if it failed, Yang Kai felt failure was highly unlikely. After all, the sword intent already had a certain degree of compatibility with the monster insect queen, so, bolstered by his means, there was almost no possibility of failure. Time passed as the color of the monster insect queen gradually changed to a mixture of gold and white, while the aura fluctuations from its physical body and soul became more and more stable, an obvious sign that the integration was nearly complete. Just to be safe, Yang Kai even pierced his palm and forced out a few drops of his purest golden blood to ensure the monster insect queen's body was fully repaired. Suddenly, the snow-white eyes of the monster insect queen glowed a profound golden light and its huge body shivered, as if the sword intent was becoming familiar with its newly fused body. Stumbling up from the ground with difficulty like a toddler trying to stand for the first time, it almost fell to the ground several times. When it finally managed to support itself and began to slowly walk around, Yang Kai could not help laughing. Success! Although his idea was a bit outlandish, it had proved effective in the end. Using a separate soul and physical body, he was able to condense a complete blood beast. Originally, blood beasts were not truly living creatures and were instead formed from dead monster beasts. It was a divine ability that attached a golden blood thread to a corpse, and the requirements for materials were not too strict. Even if the monster insect queen was crawling on the ground, Its body was still 1.5 times Yang Kai's height and had an imposing presence. The more Yang Kai observed his latest work, the more satisfied he became with it. He could clearly feel the chaotic will of the sword intent inside the monster insect queen's body still intimately tied to his soul. When he fought against this guy before, he had not been able to determine its full strength, so now, Yang Kai naturally wanted to see how powerful it could be. With a thought, he instructed the monster insect queen. The monster insect queen immediately stood upright and condensed sword chi onto its right forelimb. With the appearance of this sword chi, rich ice principles also condensed, causing the surrounding temperature to rapidly drop and innumerable tiny snowflake-like blades to form in the air before it slashed forward, sending out a deadly barrage towards the void. Clear sky snowfall. A violent power burst out suddenly, causing the surrounding space to tremble as the world principles became slightly disordered from the impact. Yang Kai nodded in appreciation. Worthy of Ascension sword intent, its mastery of this sword Dao secret technique had reached a grandmaster level. However, that wasn't a surprise as it was originally the sword intent of a powerful Emperor Realm Master. At this moment, using the monster insect queen as a medium, it was almost as if an emperor was personally taking action. The power it could display was obviously reduced due to various reasons, but the profundity of the secret technique itself was still an astonishing sight to behold. About as strong as a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivator's full-powered strike? Yang Kai frowned as he muttered to himself and stared at the monster insect queen. Yang Kai was not dissatisfied at all as his experiment had achieved the expected effect. Although he had felt an aura close to an Emperor Realm Master from the monster insect queen before, after transforming it into a blood beast, the amount of strength it could display had dropped noticeably. This was inevitable. The blood beasts Yang Kai had condensed before were all like this. What's more, at this moment, the sentient sword intent and monster insect queen had just fused together, so it certainly wasn't able to exert its full power yet. After some time, the power it could display would improve, but Yang Kai estimated that the third-order Dao Source Realm would be its peak. Still, it was enough. With the support of a third-order Dao Source Realm Master by his side, one he could order around at will, Yang Kai finally had some qualification to stand in the star boundary and would no longer need to be as cautious and fearful as he had been until now. However, external forces were in the end just that, external. It was personal strength that a cultivator should always prioritize. Yang Kai deeply understood this and thus did not put all his hopes on external boosts. His punishment here in the ice cliff had yielded great rewards. Without even mentioning the strange ice flower and ice fruits, just this monster insect queen had made Yang Kai's stay worthwhile. On top of that, he had made a breakthrough to the third-order Origin King realm here and transformed half his Saint Chi into Source Chi while simultaneously comprehending his new Nihility secret technique. Yang Kai was in an excellent mood as he observed the monster insect queen in front of him, while thinking it would be good if he could find an ice attribute artifact sword. With a proper artifact to assist it, the sword intent would be able to exert significantly more power in combat. If an enemy were to suddenly face this monster insect queen while it wielded a long sword and used clear sky snowfall, they would definitely be stunned stupid. Although Yang Kai had many artifacts on hand, aside from a few Emperor artifacts, there was really nothing he used personally, and there certainly was not an ice attribute sword that would meet the monster insect queen's requirements. This was not a surprise though, since how could there be any monster beasts who were proficient in sword Dao secret techniques? After instructing the monster insect queen to continue adjusting itself inside the small sealed world, Yang Kai left. There was nothing more Yang Kai needed to do as it would simply take time and accumulation for the sentient sword intent and monster insect queen to fully integrate. Once this process was complete, it would become a complete blood beast. Yang Kai was looking forward to it. Over the next few days, there were no more surprises. Yang Kai dug out a new cave mansion at 5,000 meters below the top of the ice cliff and used the special environment here to temper his will. At the same time, he immersed himself in researching his new secret technique Nihility. Finally, on a certain day, Yang Kai stood at the top of Ice Cliff and looked into the distance. If his sense of time was not wrong, his 3-month confinement should be up today, so he was standing here to wait for Ko Wu to come and pick him up. Although his confinement was over, it might cause problems for him again if he simply flew back on his own, and Yang Kai didn't want to draw more attention to himself now, so he patiently waited. However, to his surprise, no matter how long he stood there, Ko Wu did not appear. It was not until the day was almost over that a small black spot appeared in the distance. Yang Kai smiled happily as he stared outwards. The appearance of this visitor quickly entered Yang Kai's eyes, but rather than Ko Wu, it was a cultivator he had never met before. Judging from the aura this person gave off, he was only a third-order origin king. The visitor stopped at a distance, apparently not intending to get too close to this dreaded restricted area, and as he stared in the direction of Yang Kai, he simply yelled, "Senior Brother Ko asked me to come tell you today that your confinement is over, and you can return to the sect." After saying what he needed to, this man turned around and left. Yang Kai was stunned and quickly leapt up from where he stood to chase after this man. As a fellow third-order origin king, and with the other party not flying at full speed, Yang Kai naturally caught up very quickly. Flying forward side by side, the person frowned slightly as he quietly spread out a bit from Yang Kai. Although Yang Kai was aware of this, he did not pay it any mind and instead cupped his fists and asked, "Dare I ask this senior brother's surname?" The man wore an impatient look and snapped, "I was just ordered to deliver a message from Senior Brother Ko. Don't try to get friendly with me." This man wore a grumpy expression on his face, like Yang Kai owed him a large sum of money. Being rebuffed so forcefully, Yang Kai felt a bit awkward but still tried to ask, "Why didn't Senior Brother Ko come today, and instead troubled Senior Brother to come in his place?" Senior Brother Ko was given a task and left the sect a month ago. If you want to wait for him to pick you up, you can go back to Ice Cliff. The man finished explaining quickly before accelerating forward, quickly throwing off Yang Kai. The attitude of this man was quite off-putting, which made Yang Kai upset. However, considering that most of Blue Feather Sect's disciples did not share a harmonious relationship and the two of them didn't have any friendship with each other or even know each other's names, Yang Kai didn't let it bother him. However, Ko Wu being tasked to go out a month ago surprised Yang Kai quite a bit. He wondered what kind of task would force Ko Wu to go out in such a hurry. Shaking his head, Yang Kai did not think too much about it and just flew forward leisurely. Ice Cliff was only 10,000 kilometers away from Blue Feather Sect's headquarters, a relatively short distance for Yang Kai, so it did not take him long to return to the sect. Before flying down to his humble residence, Yang Kai released his divine sense and inspected the room next door. Naturally, this was Lu Xianyun's residence as the two lived no more than 20 meters apart. Inside the room, Lu Xianyun seemed to be adjusting her breathing, but after sensing Yang Kai's divine sense, she quickly opened her eyes and ran out of the room with a look of pleasant surprise on her face. "Brother Yang, you're back." She had been alone for the past few months and was feeling a bit isolated and helpless here in Blue Feather Sect as it was an unfamiliar place to her. Although she had not known Yang Kai for a long time, because the two shared similar fates and backgrounds, she still had a sense of intimacy with him that was only enhanced by Yang Kai being so kind and good to her. When she learned that Yang Kai was being confined, she could not help worrying. If something were to happen to Yang Kai on the ice cliff, she would really be alone from now on. "I just returned." Yang Kai smiled slightly. "As long as you're all right." "Oh, Brother Yang, you actually made a breakthrough." Lu Xianyun quickly noticed Yang Kai's breakthrough and lifted her hand to cover her mouth, her beautiful eyes flashing with surprise. After all, she had heard that the environment in Ice Cliff was extremely harsh and it was difficult for people to even survive. She had been worrying about Yang Kai's safety, but he had now returned unscathed and actually broke through as well. "It was just luck." Yang Kai nodded faintly. "How have you been these past few months?" "How else could I have been?" Lu Xianyun smiled bitterly and shook her head. "Nothing's happened." As she spoke though, she suddenly coughed slightly, and an abnormal blush appeared on her face. Although she concealed this extremely quickly, how could Yang Kai have missed it? "You're hurt." Yang Kai frowned. "I had a small accident while I was cultivating," Lu Xianyun replied hurriedly. Yang Kai stared into her eyes, as if to look straight into her heart, causing Lu Xianyun to smile forcefully. "It's not a big deal. I just became a bit too anxious while I was meditating. I'll be fine after a few days of rest." "Was it really an accident when you were cultivating?" Yang Kai's voice gradually became cold. Lu Xianyun was a third-order origin king, and although it wasn't unheard of for cultivation dissonance to occur during a retreat, that was only under the premise that someone was in secluded retreat and made a mistake while comprehending some profound secret technique or art. How could Lu Xianyun have been so reckless to enter a secluded retreat in this unfamiliar, almost hostile environment? Why would I need to lie about this? Lu Xianyun said anxiously. I wanted to enter retreat to comprehend the mysteries of the Tao source realm a few days ago, but I didn't expect my strength wasn't sufficient. I'm not a naive child. Tell me the truth. Yang Kai interrupted her explanation. Lu Xianyun opened her mouth to say something, but soon let out a sigh before lowering her head. Brother Yang, just let this matter drop. Right now, Protector Bien and Senior Brother Ko are not in the sect. If we stir up trouble, it won't end well. Protector Bien isn't in the sect? Yang Kai frowned. And Protector Bien and a large number of the senior disciples left about a month ago. Senior Brother Ko was among them. I don't know why they left. In any case, I'm really fine, it's just a small injury. You and I are still new here, so we should tolerate what we can tolerate. Yang Kai nodded slightly before curling his lips and flashing a wry grin. It's good that you can think so, but I'm afraid some people don't share your opinion. As he spoke, he turned his head and looked to the side. Lu Xianyun was startled but quickly reacted, following his gaze as her own became stern. Over there, a group of 4 cultivators was walking over, with the one in the lead wearing a resolute and indifferent look. With his hands behind his back, he gave off an imposing aura while behind him there were 3 people whom Yang Kai had met before. One of them was Chu Fei, who had been taught a harsh lesson by him in the shopping district last time. It had been 3 months already, but Chu Fei's injuries had still yet to completely heal. This wasn't a surprise though, as Yang Kai had only held back just enough to not kill him last time. Even with good healing pills and Chu Fei's own restorative abilities, healing completely in just 3 months was impossible. At this moment, Chu Fei had a somewhat weak air about him, with a pale complexion and slightly unsteady steps. The other 2 were the ones who had been accompanying Chu Fei at the time. The moment Yang Kai returned from the ice cliff, this group of people had shown up at his door, so their intentions were blatantly obvious. Chu Fei looked at Yang Kai with deep hatred, like he was staring at his mortal enemy. Grinding his teeth, he quietly whispered to the cultivator who was walking in the forefront. This man's expression was cold and did not change in the slightest, but judging from Chu Fei's flattering demeanor, it was apparent that this man's status in Blue Feather Sect was not low. It was at least on the same level as Ko Wu's, with strength to match. This group walked over arrogantly, while the man in the lead directed sharp eyes towards Yang Kai, obvious disdain and contempt apparent in his gaze. After coming to a stop some 10 meters away, Chu Fei looked at Yang Kai grimly before sneering. Junior Brother Yang, I trust you've been well since we last met. I didn't expect that Protector Bien locking you up in Ice Cliff didn't take your life. It seems your luck isn't bad. Yang Kai lightly chuckled as he swept his eyes over Chu Fei and said, How are Senior Brother Chu's injuries? Are your muscles perhaps cramped from lying in bed for so long and you came here to find Junior Brother to loosen them for you again? If that is the case, Junior Brother is happy to help. Chu Fei heard this and couldn't help shivering slightly. In the battle 3 months ago, he had been unable to put up any resistance and was quickly knocked to the ground and beaten to a pulp. He had not only been severely wounded, but he had also lost all face. Even thinking about it now still gave him nightmares. Realizing he had become frightened with just a few words, Chu Fei became angry out of shame and snapped, Don't be so full of yourself. If you know what's good for you and cooperate, Senior Brother might spare you some pain, but if you don't... Oh! Yang Kai exclaimed. After not seeing you for 3 months, Senior Brother Chu's courage has certainly grown a lot. I wonder why that is? Could it be because of this Senior Brother? Saying so, Yang Kai turned his eyes towards the leader of this group. Yang Kai didn't bother acting polite as the other party was obviously here to retaliate, so acting humble would only be showing weakness. Chu Fei and the other 2 Origin Kings were not of any concern to Yang Kai. 3 months ago, when he was just a second-order Origin King, he was able to easily deal with these 3, and now his strength had grown quite significantly. The only one Yang Kai had to care about was this helper they had brought. The man's aura was on the same level as Ko Wu's, and if Yang Kai's guess was right, he should be a first-order Dao Source Realm Master. This man had not said a word since he appeared, but when Yang Kai's eyes met with his, a terrifying light flashed across them as a pure burst of spiritual energy shot out and stabbed towards his knowledge sea. This man had directly displayed a soul secret technique in an attempt to overwhelm Yang Kai's knowledge sea defenses in one fell swoop, giving him a vicious demonstration of authority. Yang Kai was furious. Divine sense attacks were extremely dangerous, and if one was not careful, they could wind up as a mindless fool. The other party's actions were nothing less than brutal, and he obviously had no intention of holding back. This was completely different from when Yang Kai had beat up Chu Fei. No matter how heavy-handed Yang Kai was at the time, he made sure that Chu Fei would be able to recover normally if given enough time. But this man had launched an attack that could very well cause irreversible injury. At the very least, this kind of approach would leave dark injuries on his soul that could never be fully healed. Infuriated, Yang Kai coldly snorted and madly mobilized his own knowledge seas, summoning up a roaring wave of spiritual energy to meet his opponent head-on. Facing a divine sense attack that had already locked onto him, Yang Kai could not dodge and could only brutally fight back. At the same time, inside his knowledge sea, a dazzling 7-colored light blossomed from the 7-colored soul-warming lotus as it began to rotate rapidly. The dazzling radiance expanded outwards and merged together with Yang Kai's divine sense, further enhancing the power of his attack. An invisible collision erupted between the two at a level of danger far greater than simply crossing swords. The attacking man's eyes shrank as a look of surprise and amazement flashed across his face. Obviously, he hadn't expected Yang Kai's soul to be just as powerful as his own. A moment of carelessness had caused him to suffer a small loss as his face turned pale, and he felt a sharp pain in his head. Yang Kai also did not feel any better though. Such a dangerous divine sense collision had obviously caused him some damage as well. However, with the protection and restorative power of his soul-warming lotus, he did not need to worry about this. Even if his soul was damaged, the soul-warming lotus would be able to repair it for him. On the contrary, his opponent, who had believed he could crush Yang Kai at will, now discovered that the young man in front of him was actually able to fight him on even ground, making him curse himself for underestimating his opponent as he hurriedly tried to take back his divine sense. But how could Yang Kai let him off so easily? Relying on his higher cultivation, this man had launched a divine sense attack without saying a word, obviously intending to suppress him in one shot. Yet now he wanted to retreat? Not if Yang Kai had anything to say about it. Resisting the piercing ache in his mind, Yang Kai grit his teeth and forced his divine sense to chase after the withdrawing enemy. The indifferent look on the man's face finally changed, all of his previous disdain and mockery being replaced with shock and horror. Although he had only fought a single round with Yang Kai, he could now see that this young man was a madman. Without even mentioning how this junior brother at the third-order origin king realm had spiritual energy equal to his own, just the will to risk critically injuring himself to strike back at his opponent was not something an ordinary man could achieve. Does this bastard not fear death? Deep in his heart, the man felt a deep sense of fright. In a head-on confrontation, the stronger won. When Yang Kai's violent divine sense surged forward, crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood along the way, pursuing his opponent's divine sense back to his knowledge sea and tearing open his defenses, the man couldn't help stumbling backwards and crying out in pain. No longer possessing the aloof demeanor of a senior brother anymore, he was reduced to a simple man suffering unbearable torment. Yang Kai also trembled as his face turned pale. However, he grit his teeth and charged towards his enemy at remarkable speed without saying a word. "Senior brother Zhou, Chu Fei exclaimed in shock. From his point of view, this senior brother named Zhou had only stared at Yang Kai for an instant before both of them shook violently and turned pale. Senior brother Zhou had been forced to retreat several steps while Yang Kai took this opportunity to approach, a cruel and merciless light filling his eyes. Chu Fei was still a third-order origin king, so he had detected the fluctuations of divine sense just now, but what he could not believe was that it was senior brother Zhou who had actually suffered the bigger loss in that brief confrontation. Seeing Yang Kai not retreat but instead attack, Chu Fei hurriedly shouted to warn Zhou Yi. But how could he act in time? As soon as his voice fell, Yang Kai had already rushed up to the cultivator named Zhou Yi, and a five-colored glow from his five elements indestructible sword chi covered his fists as he struck forward towards his enemy's chest. Honk! The world vibrated fiercely as a violent force burst out and Zhou Yi was directly pounded into the ground, leaving behind a human-shaped pit as dust filled the air. Seeing this scene, Chu Fei felt a sense of déjà vu as it was so similar to what had happened to him 3 months ago. Suddenly his face turned pale as he trembled in place, while his two junior brothers put on an even more embarrassing display as they called out in alarm and hurriedly retreated for fear of being implicated. How could this be? Chu Fei was completely dumbfounded. He thought that Yang Kai would definitely be taught a severe lesson if he invited senior brother Zhou Yi to avenge him, and now, with all the masters from Protector Bian's faction out of the sect, no one could stop him. Today, he was going to get his revenge and humiliate Yang Kai. But how could he have anticipated that the senior brother he invited would be beaten to the ground by Yang Kai in a face-to-face encounter? The bizarre scene before him caused Chu Fei to doubt his eyes. It wasn't until this time that Chu Fei noticed Yang Kai's cultivation was no longer at the second-order Origin King realm, but had instead reached the third order. How could he have made a breakthrough in that damned ice cliff? Chu Fei's heart shook as he realized that he had made a mistake this time. In Blue Feather Sect, there had always been a convention. Any disciple that was confined in the ice cliff and did not die would become highly valued, and if that disciple was able to gain some insight or even break through in the ice cliff, they would immediately become an elite disciple of sect, causing their status to soar up to the sky. Over the years, many senior brothers had risen to fame because of this. After all, the ice cliff was formed by an Emperor Realm Master single strike and was suffused with profound Emperor pressure and ice principles. Being able to break through in that kind of environment showed just how talented a cultivator was. And now, Yang Kai was undoubtedly such a disciple. If this news spread, it would definitely attract the attention of the sect, and this junior brother, whom Chu Fei hated deeply, would instantly come to possess much higher status and importance than him. At that time, he would only be able to look up to Yang Kai. As for revenge, there was no need to even dream of it anymore, as Yang Kai not coming to find trouble with him would be a blessing. Many distracting thoughts passed through Chu Fei's mind as he quickly understood that if he could not solve this matter properly today, it would become a catastrophe for him, causing him to panic internally. Just as Chu Fei was secretly scolding Zhou Yi for being useless, a low growl filled with rage suddenly rang out. "Boy, you court death." This voice was filled with unspeakable hatred, like a wounded beast's roar tinged with cold murderous intent. Chu Fei's eyes lit up and he was called out with joy. "Senior brother Zhou." The low roar was from Zhou Yi, who had been punched into the ground by Yang Kai. Although Yang Kai had not held back, Zhou Yi was a first-order Dao Source Realm Master, so how could he possibly be killed so easily? After becoming disoriented after his loss during their Divine Sense confrontation just now, he had been unable to prevent Yang Kai's follow-up attack in time. Now that he had come back to his senses, he was naturally enraged. As he shouted, he leapt up and turned a vicious glare towards Yang Kai, his eyes bloodshot as killing intent radiated from his body. If he had only accepted Chu Fei's request to meddle in this matter reluctantly before, after being punched by Yang Kai, he now personally wanted to butcher him. After being beaten to such an extent by a junior brother who was in a lower realm, how could Zhou Yi wash off this shame with anything other than blood? The surrounding space began to stiffen as the anger of a Dao Source Realm Master was even able to affect the ambient world principles to a certain extent. Wind began to gather towards Zhou Yi, whipping his hair into a frenzied dance as his aura continued to sharply rise. Yang Kai tensed up as he instinctively felt a sense of crisis surge up in his heart, so he directly used his demon eye of annihilation without any hesitation. His left eye suddenly turned golden as a narrow pupil containing a mysterious and majestic power that had an incredible suppressive effect on one's soul burst forth. As their eyes met, Zhou Yi could not help feeling startled because he could feel the strange force coming from this golden eye affecting his thoughts and will. In his Divine Sense exchange with Yang Kai, he had suffered a small injury, so now facing the demon eye of annihilation, he was naturally at a disadvantage. Xianxia seized the opportunity to display his most powerful soul secret technique, Blossoming Lotus. A lotus bud suddenly appeared in his left eye and in a flicker shot into Zhou Yi's eyes. Everything in front of Zhou Yi suddenly disappeared, and all that was left was this lotus bud. The bud madly began extracting his spiritual energy and slowly blossomed, revealing a kind of strange, deadly beauty. Xianxia currently had an advantage over Zhou Yi in terms of soul cultivation, so how could he not take advantage of it? As soon as the Blossoming Lotus secret technique came out, Xianxia took the initiative to attack again. Before Zhou Yi could react, Xianxia shot out dozens of golden blood threads which, under his exquisite divine sense control, twisted and turned into a golden net that wrapped up Zhou Yi. This was just one of the myriad transformations possible for Xianxia's golden blood thread. Dragon Transformation. Xianxia did not hesitate to use another secret technique, morphing his right arm into a vicious dragon claw before he thrust it out towards Zhou Yi's chest. Now that things had developed to this point, it was either Xianxia died or Zhou Yi died. The latter's murderous intent was not just a deterrent. It represented a real desire to kill Xianxia. Against someone who wanted to seriously kill him, Xianxia would not show mercy. "Brother Yang, don't," Lu Xianyun called out in alarm from behind. If Xianxia really killed Zhou Yi, it would no longer be possible to resolve this matter. But as she did not have a way to calm the situation in front of her either, she could only shout instinctively. Xianxia turned a deaf ear to her cries as his expression remained cold and indifferent as he made his resolve to quickly kill the enemy before him. Seeing the dragon claw about to penetrate his chest, Zhou Yi managed to shake off the influence of the Blossoming Lotus secret technique at the critical moment and roar, "Boy, you dare!" With a clatter, the lotus image in Zhou Yi's eyes shattered and his murderous intent, which had stagnated somewhat, soared upwards again. At the same time, his first-order Tao Source Realm cultivation exploded vigorously. "Anguished Wind Palm," Zhou Yi shouted as he stuck out a palm covered in rich wind attribute energy, creating a storm-like vortex that tried to chew through Xianxia's right arm. A harsh grating sound echoed as the dragon scales on Xianxia's right arm broke apart. Even the dragon claw itself wasn't able to maintain its shape properly. Although the first-order Tao Source Realm was only a single minor realm above Xianxia's current cultivation, because Zhou Yi's Saint Qi had been completely transformed into Source Qi, his true combat power had far exceeded that of an ordinary third-order origin king. What's more, first-order Tao Source cultivators had touched upon the threshold principles and could slightly mobilize them to enhance their techniques. What Zhou Yi cultivated was undoubtedly the wind attribute, and his anguished wind palm obviously contained all his perceptions and comprehensions of the wind principles. Wind principles were swift and flexible, so this anguished wind palm was both terrifyingly fast and sharp. Feeling the approaching murderous intent made Xianxia's complexion change drastically, but rather than retreating, he grit his teeth and pushed his dragon claw towards Zhou Yi's chest with even more force. "You?" Zhou Yi's eyes bulged as he desperately pushed his source qi to protect his body, but even then, he was unable to stop Xianxia's sharp dragon claw. Under the terrifying penetrating power of this dragon claw, Zhou Yi's defenses were akin to paper. In an instant, Zhou Yi's heart was grasped by Xianxia. The next moment, the anguished wind palm's attack struck Xianxia. However, the instant Zhou Yi's palm was about to make contact, Xianxia's figure suddenly flickered and disappeared, causing the violent blast of wind to hit nothing but air. When the lingering power of this palm dissipated, Xianxia's figure reappeared, as if he had never even moved. Nihility. By using his Nihility secret technique, Xianxia had merged his body with the void temporarily, thus avoiding the majority of the anguished wind palm's power. However, a part of the attack's force still blasted into Xianxia's body, ripping into his physique and wantonly damaging his physical body. Xianxia's vitality roiled in his chest and he could not stop himself from coughing up blood. "You're not dead," Zhou Yi exclaimed in shock. He was certain Xianxia would die under his palm. After all, Xianxia's hand had grabbed hold of his heart, so there was no way he could dodge. Zhou Yi was sure that his anguished wind palm was enough to rip apart any third-order origin king in a frontal collision. What Zhou couldn't figure out was how Yang Kai seemed to have only suffered some small injuries and not taken any major damage. What kind of secret technique did he just use? This boy had somehow been able to avoid his attack without even moving. It was almost as if he didn't exist at that moment. In front of his simple wooden house, Yang Kai's right arm dripped with red blood as golden blood leaked from the corner of his mouth, making for a terrifying picture as he tightly clenched Zhou Yi's still-beating heart. Zhou Yi was still bound tightly by the net of golden blood threads as he stared at Yang Kai in front of him with dilated eyes. Madman! This junior brother of his was an absolute lunatic. Zhou Yi kept screaming in his heart. The two maintained such a stalemate, motionless. An extremely solemn atmosphere filled the air, making it almost impossible to even breathe. Not far away, Lu Xianyun covered her mouth with her small hands as her beautiful eyes shook violently, while Chu Fei and the other two Origin Kings stood there gulping hard. Heh. It seems this is your loss, senior brother. Yang Kai grinned suddenly. Zhou Yi's face twitched slightly, and although he was full of unwillingness, there was no doubt that his life was currently no longer his to control. As long as Yang Kai exerted a little bit more force, he can take his life. If you kill me, you'll die too. Zhou Yi stared at Yang Kai coldly, but did not even try to beg for mercy, instead making threats. Are you willing to bet on that? Let's see if I can leave this damned place after I kill you. Junior brother may not be very strong, but he is confident in his ability to escape. Yang grinned wickedly as Zhou Yi shut his mouth, not daring to speak for fear that this crazy junior brother of his would really crush his heart. If that happened, it wouldn't matter to him if Yang Kai lived or died because he would already be dead regardless. Everyone had only one life, so Zhou Yi didn't dare to risk his. If you dare to move, I'll kill him immediately. Yang Kai suddenly turned his head and stared coldly at Chu Fei, who seemed to be trying to escape. Only after Yang Kai spoke did Lu Xianyun suddenly recover from her shock, and with a flicker she arrived in front of Chu Fei to stare at him vigilantly in case he took the opportunity to escape. Chu Fei felt like crying in anguish as he really didn't dare to move now. You seem like a smart person, and obviously you don't want to fight a battle where everyone dies in the end, right? Draw back and senior brother will let this matter drop. Zhou Yi's expression narrowed as he stared at Yang Kai in front of him and spoke. Yang Kai snickered. Naturally, I don't want to die, but with things having gotten to this point, there can be no good end. Senior brother, what do you think would be best, killing you now and fleeing, or killing you and waiting to see what punishment the sect metes out? And do not spout any nonsense about not finding trouble with me again if I let you go. Only a fool would believe such drivel. Zhou Yi's face went gloomy as he did not know how to answer. Forget it. Yang Kai suddenly laughed cheerfully and said, we should settle accounts here first before discussing what comes next. Saying so, he turned his head and looked at Chu Fei and his minions, his eyes gradually becoming cold. In the end, you're the reason all of this happened. Whether it was me being confined for 3 months or this incident, it's all your fault. Since that's the case, let's start by having you kneel down and slap yourselves while calling yourselves pigs. As soon as this statement came out, Chu Fei and the others' complexions changed drastically. You, don't go too far, Chu Fei screamed. Although this place was relatively remote and there were usually very few people who came and went from here, if he really obeyed Yang Kai's command, how would he be able to show his face in the sect in the future? This story would immediately be passed out to every disciple and he would degenerate into a complete laughingstock. We'd sooner die than suffer such humiliation, the second-order Origin King also yelled, his face filled with anger. Is that so? Yang Kai smiled slightly before ignoring Chu Fei and the others, instead turning to look at Zhou Yi while slowly tightening his grip. Senior brother Chu doesn't seem to want to cooperate, so what should we do now? Junior brother currently has his hands full and cannot force them to comply, which is annoying him greatly. If by some chance junior brother were to lose control and apply too much strength, Zhou Yi immediately began oozing big beads of sweat from his forehead. He could already feel the pressure on his heart growing stronger and stronger, causing his breathing to become a bit hurried. Quickly turning his head, he yelled at Chu Fei and the others in a panic. The guilty must pay for their own crimes. This matter was caused by you three, so you cannot just stand by and feign innocence. If I die, I die. But if I, Zhou Yi, can escape this disaster, you should understand what fate you'll endure. As soon as Zhou Yi spoke, Chu Fei and the others could not help turning pale as all of them turned hate-filled yet imploring looks towards Yang Kai, as if praying he would show them mercy and spare them. Yang Kai, of course, turned a blind eye to them as he continued to increase the strength of his grip. You haven't kneeled down yet? Zhou shouted. Chu Fei and the others didn't dare to hesitate, and all fell to their knees, their expressions uglier than if they were about to die. Shame. Such great shame. Regardless of anything else, they were Origin King Realm cultivators. Fighting and being injured was a common matter to them, but when had they ever been forced to kneel? Each of them cursed out Yang Kai in their hearts as they all secretly vowed to find a chance in the future to repay this humiliation 100-fold. Otherwise, how could they purge the hatred in their hearts? Why don't I hear the sound of faces being slapped? Yang Kai turned his ear to the side with a puzzled look on his face. Zhou Yi's fierce eyes immediately floated over towards Chu Fei and others. Pa pa pa. Chu Fei and his followers lifted their hands and slapped their cheeks numbly. What else? Yang Kai continued to sneer. Chu Fei felt his blood boil as his heart seized, almost causing him to pass out from rage and making him wish he could rush out and fight Yang Kai to the death. But because of Zhou Yi's despotic power, how could he dare show any trace of resistance? Steeling himself, with a face as ugly as if he was crying, he began to shout, I am a pig, woo-woo. With Chu Fei taking the lead, the remaining two naturally did not dare to hold their silence, and so a grand spectacle played out. 3 Blue Feather sect disciples knelt on the ground, slapping themselves while calling themselves pigs. This kind of humiliation was 100 times worse than any torture the sect would use as punishment. I should not have provoked Junior Brother Yang. I am a pig. I'm a pig, Junior Brother Yang. Please show mercy and spare us this time. And very good. Yang Kai laughed with satisfaction. Even if things were a bit forced, it's good. Is that enough? Zhou Yi looked at Yang Kai coldly, his teeth grinding so hard they seemed they would shatter as the hatred in his eyes was so thick it was almost tangible. Senior brother, you're really fierce. Yang Kai immediately put on a frightened look. Junior brother is quite timid, so please don't stare at him like that. If Junior brother becomes flustered, he might accidentally crush your heart. Zhou Yi closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, they were dull and indifferent as he quickly said, Junior Brother Yang, it was Senior Brother that had eyes but failed to see and angered you today. We should let this matter stop here. In the end, we're both fellow sect brothers, so we should not raise our hands against. Before he could finish speaking though, Yang Kai suddenly lifted his left hand and slapped him. Pa! A blood-red palm print appeared on Zhou Yi's cheek and even a few teeth were knocked out. Now you say we're fellow brothers? We should not raise our hands against one another? Why didn't you think so when you tried to attack me just now? You what? Yang Kai slapped out again. Zhou Yi instinctively wanted to resist, but feeling the grip on his heart tightening, he did not and could only receive this second slap willingly. The anger which he had just forced down was instantly rekindled and his eyes became bloodshot. If you utter another word, I will slap you, and if you keep staring at me like this, I'll punch you like this. Yang Kai punched out, hitting Zhou Yi's eyes, blackening them. Zhou Yi finally held his tongue, knowing that Yang Kai was completely insane and could not be provoked. Showing any signs of resistance or anger now would only cause him to suffer. With no other option, Zhou Yi simply lowered his head, so he didn't have to look at Yang Kai. At the same time, he was already thinking up just how he would torture Yang Kai in the future to wash off this insult. Xian Yun, is he the one who hurt you? Yang Kai suddenly asked an inexplicable question. Lu Xianyun's expression changed, opening her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but she just nodded in the end. It wasn't difficult for Yang Kai to guess this. After all, he understood Lu Xianyun's strength well, and knew it was impossible for Chu Fei to have wounded her so. The only person who had such ability was this Zhou Yi. Yang Kai nodded indifferently before grinning. As a senior brother in the sect, Not only did you not take care of your junior brother and sister who were newly recruited, you deliberately bullied and oppressed them. Senior brother Zhou Yi, you're a true role model. When his words fell, Yang Kai's left fist flew and beat Zhou Yi violently. Zhou Yi had no ability to resist and could only endure Yang Kai's abrupt beating. Although Yang Kai's cultivation was a minor realm lower than his own, his physical strength was extremely strong, so the force behind each fist could not be ignored. As such, it was not long before Zhou Yi's face had become swollen and bruised, deformed to the point it was miserable to look at. Suddenly, Zhou Yi laughed coldly and said in no uncertain terms, "Boy, if you don't kill me today, you'll pay for this in the future." Yang Kai frowned, looked out into the distance thoughtfully, then coldly snorted and said, "Don't worry, I'll be sure to kill you before I die." At that moment, he had sensed a master rapidly approaching their position. This was not a surprise, of course, as it had been some time since this incident had begun and word of it had surely spread throughout Bluefeather sect by now. So Yang Kai expected someone to come sooner or later. What he didn't expect was that the master who came would be so powerful. Even from so far away, the pressure Yang Kai felt was not weaker than that of Bian Yuqing's. Which protector has come? Yang Kai could not stop his expression from sinking. Soon, Lu Xianyun also sensed the approach of this master, and her beautiful eyes could not help looking at Yang Kai with worry. After all, the trouble he had gotten into was indeed a bit fierce. Meanwhile, Chu Fei and his two minions were still kneeling on the ground, slapping themselves while calling themselves pigs. A moment later, a profound streak of light appeared and came to a halt up in the sky not far from where Yang Kai and the others stood. When the light faded, a number of figures were revealed. Terrifying coercion fell from the sky, making it difficult for everyone to breathe and causing their bodies to sink, as if a great mountain was pressing down on them.